Part 60. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 616. Plop. His thick palm fell to the ground, still holding the neatly cut off Vajra. Nai Haitang opened her eyes wide, trying to see clearly the identity of the visitor, but the injuries on her body had already blurred her consciousness. In the haze, he only heard the sound of ding bell. The sound of a bell in the air stimulated Nai Haitang's consciousness. After his vision became blurry, he passed out. Begonia. Begonia. I don't know how long it took, but there were calls coming from my ears. When Nai Haitang woke up, it was already dawn. When he saw clearly that the person in front of him was his senior brother Zhao Peng, Nai Haitang's tense mind finally relaxed. Haitang, what happened? Zhao Peng looked at the junior sister who woke up, with a little tenderness in his eyes. Senior brother, fat and thin Taochuo. Nai Haitang recalled what happened last night, but the pictures were all fragments and it was difficult to explain clearly at the moment. Yes, they are dead. Junior sister, who killed them? Zhao Peng and the others were also shocked. They had been tracking the two cult masters, fat and slender Taochuo, for some time. This is not the first time the two sides have played against each other, and they have some understanding of each other. These two people are not only very powerful, but also cunning and cunning. They always cooperate with each other and never act alone. They fell into the trap of these two men and got separated from Nai Haitang. Ordinarily, when a junior sister meets these two people, she cannot be her opponent. But when they arrived, they found that Fat and Xiao Tuchuo was already dead. Judging from the scars on the bodies, the two men were almost killed in one blow. What is even more surprising is that the weapons used by the two men were all forged from fine iron from the western regions, but they were all broken. Especially the Vajra, the cuts are terrifyingly neat. To be able to cause such an incision, the opponent must either be a top master with extremely high swordsmanship, or hold a magical blade in his hand. And my junior sister obviously does not possess these two conditions. So he guessed that someone must have taken action and saved his junior sister's life. It's just, although Fatty Taochuo died, the soul of the corpse disappeared. This kind of soul-capturing technique does not look like the means of a righteous master. With all kinds of questions, everyone looked at Nai Haitang, hoping to get answers from her. However, to everyone's disappointment, Nai Haitang thought about it carefully for a long time before he said, the other party was wrapped in Fat Taochuo's green flames. I couldn't see his face clearly, but in a daze, I seemed to see something covering his body. Covered by layers of pitch-black scales. Hearing such an answer, everyone couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. However, no one meant to blame Nai Haitang. As she said, the other party was covered in black armor and must have deliberately concealed his face. Even if Nai Haitang could see clearly, he might not be able to see the other party's true face. Anyway, it's okay, junior sister, it's okay. Master said that junior sister, you have 3 calamities, but now you have survived 1 calamity safely. The junior brother behind him spoke. Everyone nodded and expressed congratulations upon hearing this. On the contrary, Nai Haitang didn't know what he thought of, and looked at Zhao Peng in front of him with a slightly red face. Zhao Peng seemed to have noticed his junior sister's gaze, and he coughed twice with a somewhat unnatural expression, and said with a serious expression. Ahem, Master often said that there is a mountain higher than a mountain. I didn't expect that there are such masters in Yuzhu. This matter must be reported back to Master. After all, most of these people are both good and evil. If we can't find out what's going on, there is no guarantee that nothing bad will happen, so I will send the message immediately. Promise. A junior fellow apprentice nodded and immediately walked out the door. Senior brother, Fat and Thin Tuchuo is dead, but the clues to trace the Modeo cult have also been cut off. Should we return to Luodu to revive him? This time they were ordered to track down the Moda cult. They had been tracking it for 3 months, but the clues they finally found were cut off. It would not be easy to track them down again. After Zhao Peng thought for a moment, he shook his head. I won't go back for the time being. Junior sister's injuries are very serious and she cannot withstand the fatigue of traveling. Moreover, His Majesty gave Master an order to conduct a thorough investigation of the Motuo section. If the base of the Motuo sect cannot be found, we can't go back and recover. After saying that, he motioned to a junior brother to take out the map. After a quick glance, he said, Yuyang is just not far away. Let's settle down in Yuyang first and wait for Master's letter. Besides, haven't we heard that there is a water monster in Yuyang town recently? Let's go and have a look. If so, as soon as possible, we will destroy this water monster together to relieve the imperial court's worries. Promise. After hearing this, everyone suddenly became energetic. It seemed that as long as senior brother Zhao Peng was around, they could calmly find the backbone no matter what time it was. Your Majesty, Yuyang City is ahead. Guo Yi shouted to Su Tong outside the carriage. Nu. Su Tong responded softly, and then motioned to Guo Yi and the others to find an inn to rest after entering the city. Yuyang City. Su Tong's eyes overflowed with cold light. 3 river inspectors, 1 died and 2 committed suicide. It would be strange to say that they had nothing to do with the government of Yuyang City. Therefore, he did not plan to go to the government to report first, but to rest first. Anyway, the mission time was 3 months, and he was not in a hurry. There is one more thing at the same time. Modhism. I had no intention of intervening in what happened last night. It doesn't matter whether you are a boy or a girl. It is normal for you to become a king or a loser. But the bad thing is that the fat man calls himself the Modha cult. Isn't this a coincidence? My master gave me the being killing order, and the people to be killed were the Motuo cult. These 2 guys bumped into the muzzle of the gun themselves. Who can blame them? Aren't you going to tell me yet? Thinking of this, he raised his head and looked at the entrance above his head. I told you a long time ago that the confession has been written. Seeing that you were so engrossed in your thoughts just now, I didn't bother you. The big girl at the entrance of the hall transformed into a human form, and her long thin white legs were dangling in front of Su Tong. This vixen went to the 5 Immortals Hall and received the inheritance from the ancestor of the Fox family in the 5 Immortals Hall. After these days of hard training, she was stunned. From the original Tuha, she transformed into a lovable Hiromi. Even when he spoke, he had to speak with a tight accent, which made Su Tong feel uncomfortable. I still like the rustic flavor from before, please change it. Headmaster, I am a fox, not a native dog, and I want to change my name. The name Dia affects my practice. Stop talking nonsense, it's easy to make money with a bad name, you know nothing. Su Tong and Dia bickered for a while before getting the confession from Fat and Xiao Tuchuo. If you take a closer look, you will see that the Moda sect is really in Yuzhu. It's just that the whereabouts of the Moda leader is erratic, and the court is also chasing him. They don't know where the Moda leader is now. However, people from the Mochuo cult have begun to gather in Yuzhu, and I believe that it will not be long before rumors begin to spread. The secret code is to focus on the 3 inches of the spiritual platform. Headmaster, since they have lost their value, why not? After Daya finished speaking, fortune and good luck also became energetic. Obviously during this period, without the incense offerings, they were almost starving. Don't be in a hurry, let's wait and see. If we really find traces of the Moda cult, then maybe they will still be useful. After Su Tong comforted these 3 guys, he put away the confession in his hand, sat quietly in the carriage, and followed the convoy into the city. Guo Yi followed Su Tong's instructions and found an inn to stay with his troops. Boss, there is 1 upper room and 2 bunks. Guo Yi walked to the counter and said. Add 2 more tables of food and wine. Su Tong walked past Guoyi and mentioned it casually. Son. Guoyi wanted to refuse, but Su Tong waved his hand. We will make do with the accommodation, but the food cannot be worse. Seeing Guoyi in trouble, Su Tong took out a piece of dough from his sleeve and placed it on the boss's desk. Use it first, then wait until it's not enough. Although there is no blessing of wealth, you are still a relative of the royal family. It is impossible to say that you have no money in your pocket. It is just that you are a little bit poorer than when you were blessed with wealth before. Yes, yes, don't worry. When the shopkeeper saw the silver lump, he couldn't take his eyes away immediately. He took it and weighed it in his hand. It was a full 50 taels, and his heart blossomed with joy. In this era, money is not as abundant as in the late Qing dynasty. The money now is real hard currency. The shopkeeper happily put the money into his arms and immediately called the store clerk to start making arrangements. Sir, the money I gave you is well worth it. Guoyi looked at the smiles on his men's faces, but instead reminded them in a worried voice. The so-called knowing means that all the money was used to build relationships with Li Zheng. His father, Prince Gong, was not a fool. He knew what level his son was. He could inexplicably serve as a river inspector. It was obvious that someone was planning to take advantage of him. The son is a gunman. It's a pity that he is just a marginal prince with no power and no master under his command. What he could take out was some money he had saved over the years, and he gave it to Li Zheng in the hope that the money could save his life at the critical moment. Not much money, only 1,000 taels, a huge amount of money. I have to say that my father still loves me very much, but his thinking is too naive. Since they are determined to use him as a gunman, this little money given away may not even be enough to buy them a coffin. Seeing that Guoyi felt sorry for the money, Su Tong grinned and added to the shopkeeper, add 2 more jars of good wine. This time Guoyi's face became even more bitter. Seeing that everyone had settled down, Su Tong went to the room upstairs to rest. Opening the door, Su Tong clapped his hands and saw a ray of black light jumping out of the entrance of the hall. This time, without Su Tong's instructions, Jixiang rolled on the ground and slipped into the mouse hole under the bed to develop himself. His disciples have gone. Su Tong was not idle either, and let him transform into his own appearance, pretending to be lying on the bed to rest. Then he tiptoed out of the window, landed firmly on his feet, and looked up at the distance between the alley and the street. Put one hand on your pulse and count your heartbeats, while taking steps, counting the steps silently. Step. 3 steps. 7 steps. 9 steps. Until I took 12 steps, I happened to walk out of the alley, and I made a careful calculation in my mind. Seeing a dragon in the field is a good thing to see an adult. Mom, I want to eat cake. Silly boy, this is for the city god. If you want to eat it back, my mother will brand it for you. Just as a mother and son passed by Su Tong frowned slightly. Just in time, let's go see the city god first. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 617. People in Yuyang always like to say that there are 9 rivers in Yuyang, and God will never be hungry. In fact, this is indeed the case. The fish and shrimps on the street are extremely cheap, but occasionally Su Tong will see some people kneeling by the river to set up an altar. The altar does not worship the Sanking gods. Instead, it has the words Tong Tianzhu He Great Sage written on it. Hey, another family. The wonton vendor on the roadside looked at the old man kneeling in front of the altar and cried. He couldn't help but sigh and murmured in a low voice. Have a bowl. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw a noble young man appearing in front of him, pointing to the wontons in the pot and saying, Okay, please sit down. Seeing that the door-to-door hawkers were busy inviting people to sit down, the visitors were also surprised. They waved their hands and did not intend to sit down. Instead, they pointed to the crying old man under the altar over there. "Why are you crying here? Hey, you look like you're from out of town." The vendor glanced at Su Tong, then quickly took out a bowl of wontons, sprinkled a little salt on it and handed it to Su Tong. Su Tong didn't feel his mouth was hot when he took it, so he held the bowl to his mouth and tasted it. Although the taste is very ordinary, the filling inside is made of fish, and the soup is also stewed fish soup. It is sprinkled with a little salt and sesame oil. The taste is not bad except that it is a bit pure. While Su Tong was eating, he listened to the vendor explain. "This is worshipping the river god. It is said that people rely on mountains and rivers to eat and drink. But my dear sir, how can I not get wet shoes when I often walk by the river? No, when fishing encounters wind and waves, the boat capsizes, and the people at home are afraid of the soul. If he can't come back, he has to make an offering to the river god and ask the river god to let his son come back. Hey, pity this white-haired man and send him to a black-haired man. How difficult it is. I don't know if it's because the people in Yuyang are so poor in speech." A single sentence in a vendor's mouth sounded like a storyteller. It was fine before, but in recent years, there have been floods every year, and accidents happen every month, which has made people panic. Some people say that this is the river god asking for sacrifices from them, and the government's dog food stuff, and what kind of river god department has been established. Every year, you have to pay the offering money to the river god. If you don't pay, you can't even try to catch fish. What are you talking about? After finishing speaking, the hawker looked up. Huh? Human. Looking again, the bowl was placed on the edge of the table, with 2 coins missing from it. Well, I eat so fast. The vendor muttered, took the money, and continued to shout, "Wontons, big and delicious wontons. What a river god. He's just a river demon, taking this opportunity to collect incense." On the way, Ya kept complaining. Of course, his tone was full of jealousy. Su Tong believed that if he killed the river demon and asked her to become a river demon, even if she couldn't swim, she would never hesitate at all. More than that, Su Tong looked at the river on the roadside and said that officials protected each other and officials and businessmen colluded. But the official colluded with the monster. The official took the money, and the monster took the incense. This business was really profitable, but only the honest people suffered. Just this matter, aren't you afraid that the people in Hunshan prison will know about it? Hunshan prison, the predecessor of Qintian prison, existed in all dynasties, but it was called by different names. But after thinking about it, he found the answer from Li Zheng's memory. Today, the empress is old and her suspicions are getting worse. There are always some voices in the court asking the empress to abdicate and return her throne to the Li family. The source of the sound was unknown, and no matter how hard the empress searched, she could not find out who was behind the scenes. Whoever jumped out at this time would look particularly dazzling. The more times like this, the more sensitive the status of Hunshan prison becomes. Even though Hunshan Jian has kept a low profile as much as possible, behaved with his tail between his legs, and pretended to be confused as much as possible, he still lived on tenterhooks every day. I was afraid that some heavenly book, stone, or celestial phenomenon would pop up that day, and they would have to interpret it. If there is a slight mistake, it will be a good thing if there are no bones left. It may be possible for a whole family to kill even the 9 clans involved. At this time, Han Shenjian believed that one thing to do would be better than one thing to do less. He wished he could cover himself with a layer of invisibility cloak, so naturally he couldn't care about such trivial matters. Don't seek merit, but seek no faults. I'm afraid that Yu Yang's officials took a fancy to this and dared to collude with the river demon in such a big way to make money. However, the river demon thing is not difficult for me, and I am not in a hurry. Wandering down the street, along the street path, I walked to the edge of the city wall. When I looked up, I saw a small temple standing there. The 3 words City God's Hall are written on the temple door. Su Tong used his life eye to take a look at the Kimen and found that the luck on the ground of the City God's temple was actually pretty good, but there was no one inside the temple. There were a few fresh pancakes on the altar table, probably left by the mother and son just now. Apart from that, there were only a few moldy fruits. Compared with the altar of the river demon that I saw just now, the city god's life was a bit too miserable. Even Da Ya found it unbelievable. How could a majestic city god, the leader of a single land, manage to live in such a land? In fact, we can't blame the city god for his misfortune. City god is the god of a city, in charge of local land, mountain gods, ghosts, and other things. In Li Zheng's memory, the city god was originally only in the Jiangnan area, and his status was not high. It wasn't until the imperial court published an article on sacrifice to the city god of Hangzhou that Emperor Taizong issued an edict that the city god be conferred the title of Hunshan supervisor of the state. The city gods of other state capitals were named Inspection Simon City God Wei Linggong and were awarded the title of second grade. The city god of the city is the third grade Willing Hao, the city god of the Inspection Simon. The county god Inspection Simon City God Zion Yubo is the fourth grade. After this, the status of the city god was officially confirmed and included in the ceremony. This shows how important the imperial seal is to those Shinto. It is normal that Nanshan Kitadan will not be easily accepted for a while. Moreover, in the hearts of Yuyang people, the city god is not as good as the river god. Even if they are canonized by the imperial court, after all, no matter how powerful the city god is, he can't control what happens in the river. But if they offend the river god, not only will they not be able to catch fish, but their lives will be in danger. Su Tong looked at the statue of the city god covered with cobwebs and took out the being killing order given by his master in his hand. After the words fell, the being killing order in his hand began to glow, and the divine light shrouded the hall. Su Tong found that there was a divine ring on top of his head. This is a sign of the blessing of divine power. It means that if you hold this order, you represent the being spirit and can exercise part of the divine power. City god, come out and see me. Su Tong shouted, and his voice was like a thunderbolt from the blue. The divine ring in his luck emitted a golden light and hit the statue of the city god. As a result, Su Tong waited for a long time, but did not see the city god appear. Not at home. Su Tong looked around and saw that the city god did not appear, and he suddenly began to murmur in his heart. But then I thought about it and felt it wasn't quite right. As the lord of a city, how could the city god not be at home? Thinking of this, Su Tong raised his voice and shouted, "City god, come out." A loud roar shook the roof of the house, causing wisps of green ash to fall down. Finally, Su Tong seemed to sense something. When he looked back, he saw an old beggar walking in with a cane. The old beggar's eyes were dull and dull. But the action was indeed very nimble. As soon as he entered the door and saw the being killing order in Su Tong's hand, he immediately knelt on the ground to pay homage to Su Tong. The land of Yuyang, meet the envoy of Bian. Su Tong looked at the beggar and saw the shadow of an old man emerging behind the beggar. Apparently the landowner found a beggar to take advantage of, and then he reluctantly came over to pay homage to him. It's just that the land is also a true god after all. Even if it is an inferior god, it is still a real god. It even needs to borrow someone's body to appear. Su Tong suddenly had a bad feeling. Are you from Yuyang land? Let me ask you, where is the city god? The little god is the land of Yuyang. As for the city god, he has not yet returned to his throne. The land looked troubled. Although Emperor Taizong had consecrated the city god to a god a long time ago, the city god who took office stopped coming as soon as he heard that it was Yuyang. As a result, even though the city god's temple still exists, the position of the city god is in vain. The land also sensed the aura of Bian's killing order and hurried over to explain the situation. The city god is not here. Su Tong narrowed his eyelids. Sure enough, the task given by the master was not easy. Seeing that Su Tong didn't speak, the land was afraid that he would blame him, so he continued to complain, "Envoy Chi, these Yang people only believe in the river god. Even my land is hungry." Seeing that land was also nagging like the hawker, Su Tong quickly stopped land and continued talking, asking, "Then what is the origin of the river god?" "Humph, what kind of river god is he?" "He's just a tortoise who has been cultivating for hundreds of years. He made the fishermen miserable by relying on his strong water nature. I don't know when he colluded with the government to set up a spiritual tablet for him and professed himself to the heaven. Great sage Chuhi, if you are in a good mood, eat the fireworks of the world, if you are in a bad mood, eat those fishermen to satisfy your hunger." When Tutu saw someone making the decision for him, he immediately began to criticize what this bastard had done over the years. He was so cruel in his heart that he wanted to tear this bastard into pieces. Su Tong listened to him for a long time and finally became impatient. "Then do you know where this bastard is?" "Well, this little god is the lord of the earth, and the 9 rivers in Yang are as deep as 8 rivers. The more I talk about the land, the quieter my voice becomes." Su Tong rolled his eyes and thought, "No wonder people don't believe you. The key is that it's not easy to believe you. Since the city god is not here." Su Tong turned around and looked at the statue of the city god in front of him, frowning for a moment. Seeing this, Tu Di was afraid that his patron would just leave. His eyes were so anxious that he knelt on the ground with a plop, regardless of whether the old beggar's old legs could bear it or not. "The city god is not here, so I can take your place. Please care about the common people and uphold justice for our people in Yang. This is an act of immeasurable merit. The little god is willing to help you use the power of dogs and horses. Is this okay?" Of course, the envoy holding the Be in divine order has the ability to represent the local divine power. All he needs to do is separate a few souls, attach them to the divine order, and stick the divine order behind the statue. The land may seem confused, but in my heart it is clearer than a bright mirror. Although the commander in front of him looks young and may hold the Be in divine order, the backstage is probably astonishingly large. If he can seize the opportunity to hug this thigh, he will benefit from him in the future. Even if there is no benefit, if he can kill that tortoise, it will be of no harm to him. Of course Su Tong could guess what Land was thinking. But this incident made him excited. Not only was his heart moved, but De Ya was also dancing and urging Su Tong to quickly occupy the divine position. This was a good thing for nothing. If he could take the opportunity to collect the merits of the incense, wouldn't it be? However, facing De Ya's proposal, Su Tong thought about it in his heart and suddenly laughed stupidly. For a moment, neither Dia nor Tutu knew what Su Tong was laughing at. Su Tong's smile faded and he glanced at Tutu Gong. "You don't have to worry about this matter. Besides, since you are Yang Tutu, you are naturally open to outsiders. He must know his movements very well. Yes, I wonder who you want to find." The land could not figure out for a while what exactly the envoy was going to do. Of course Su Tong would not explain it to him. He was just told to pay close attention to those who entered Yang City during these times, especially those related to the Mota cult, and report to him immediately if any traces were found. Promise. Hearing this, Tu Tui felt a chill in his heart. He knew that the envoy might have another mission and would not care about the river god's affairs. Thinking of this, he could not help but feel downcast and crossed his hands in a cross-hand salute, and hurriedly left. Just as the land exited the city god's hall, the possessed beggar's legs suddenly weakened, and he sat down on the ground and screamed. When he saw that his knees were swollen, he cursed his mother and walked hard on a cane. As soon as the beggar left, it suddenly became quiet outside. At this time, Su Tong couldn't wait to use the Shankao, and jumped into the abyss of the crack. He ran and jumped, shouting, "Master, city god, can you do it?" You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 618. Rumble. Early the next morning, the sky was still misty, and it rained all night outside. Su Tong stretched and walked out of the room as if he was full from sleep. I wandered downstairs and found that Guo Yi and others were already awake. "Sir, did you sleep well last night?" Seeing Su Tong walking down, Guo Yi hurriedly stepped forward and asked with concern. So. Su Tong casually said, "Sleep, I'm a big sleeper. Last night I was pulled by my master to read a book all night long. Fortunately, I am now a great master and have a photographic memory. In one night, I have memorized the Shen Tiao Luan and continued natural history that my master asked me to read before. As for understanding what's inside, be damned. However, after memorizing books all night, Master Song still agreed to sit in the seat of the city god. As for the merits of incense, it was 30-70. The master takes 3 of them and the others belong to Su Tong. Now that the master has agreed, Su Tong will naturally do all the rest." Sitting down and looking at the watery porridge on the table, Su Tong glared, "Just eat this?" The shopkeepers. "Master, this is good, very good. Just put it down in the morning." Seeing that the prince was angry, Guo Yi immediately took his arm and indicated that he had arranged the breakfast. Su Tong rolled his eyes at Guo Yi and said, "The emperor is not short of hungry soldiers. You follow me. How can you eat these?" "Withdraw, withdraw. The shopkeeper will serve meat and rice. Those who can eat will come." The shopkeeper was naturally eager to spend money. As soon as he heard this, he immediately ran to the kitchen. Guo Yi had a grimace on his face, but Su Tong didn't give him a chance to speak. He looked around at the followers and said, "When you're full later, come with me to a place. Young master is going to report to the government office." After hearing this, Guo Yi immediately became energetic, thinking that after the crown prince reports for duty, they and others will be able to have public meals, and there will be no need for the crown prince to spend money on food, drink, housing, and transportation. No, there is no rush in reporting. However, Su Tong rejected his idea. He didn't plan to report to the yamen so early. Now the river demon was obviously colluding with the bastard. Didn't he run there to risk his death? More importantly, Su Tong also wanted to see how deep the water in Yuyang was. Li Zheng was just a fool, but he was appointed as a river inspector. Reminiscent of the encounter they had with Shen Wubai and the people of the Moda cult on their way here. I'm afraid that this place in Yuyang is just a big whirlpool. It's hard to tell whether there are humans or ghosts under the water. In this situation, Li Zheng was appointed as the river inspector, and it was obvious that he was being used as a gun. Can you go to the door obediently and serve as cannon fodder for these people? Only a fool would rush to the door. As the saying goes, build a wall high, accumulate grain widely, and become king slowly. Su Tong already had a plan in mind. You guys are waiting for cannon fodder, but I won't come to the door. Whoever likes to be in a hurry will go in a hurry. Guo Yi was very sad when he heard this. They know that their eldest son likes to mess around, but how can he do this casually? Besides, if they stay in the hotel for one more day, they will have to spend one more day. Just when Guo Yi was anxious, the food was already on the table. Su Tong picked up a pancake and said, "Eat." Except for Guo Yi, the rest of the entourage saw the meat rice being served on the table. There was no reason not to eat it, so they immediately started eating and drinking. Most of these followers are third-rate today, but they are definitely top-notch when it comes to eating. More than 10 people ate with open stomachs, and most of the food on the table was eaten immediately. Guo Yi felt very distressed when he saw it, and the pancakes in his hands no longer tasted good. Several guests, please come upstairs. Everyone was eating, and when they heard the movement behind them, they couldn't help but look back. Master! Guo Yi glanced at it, then turned his head and looked at Su Tong, who was holding the pancake and eating it. Guo Yi winked and said nothing. Su Tong followed Guo Yi's gaze and saw a group of men and women walking into the inn. 3 masters, 1 first-rate and 4 second-rate. Just glancing at it, he could see the strength of the 8 people. What surprised Su Tong was that the woman among them was not the same woman who was almost given to the fat and thin Tuchuo at the entrance of the ruined temple before. I originally thought that the woman was a chivalrous heroine who fought alone and encountered difficulties in the road, but now it seems that she was wrong. The woman's injuries are still there, but she seems to have stabilized. Looking up, she saw that her luck was strange. The 3 knots are intertwined. Although one has been undone, each time one is undone, the last button becomes closer. Nai Haitang seemed to notice that someone was staring at him. He turned around and looked around. He happened to make eye contact with Su Tong. Seeing this guy's eyes staring straight at him, Nai Haitang suddenly felt disgusted. She didn't know why, but the other person's eyes were staring at her, which made her feel a strong sense of discomfort. Fortunately, Su Tong then turned his attention to the other 2 Grand Masters. One was handsome and tall, carrying a long sword on his back. The people around him were following him invisibly, and he was obviously the top of the head. The other one was a little older, with a pair of triangular eyes looking left and right, looking very alert. He looked over, and his triangle eyes were also looking at them. When he saw Su Tong looking at them, his triangle eyes were startled, and then he glared at Su Tong fiercely. Seeing this, Su Tong immediately pretended to be timid and fearful, lowered his head and ate the cake. The origins of these people are unknown, but the sudden arrival of so many masters in the small Yuyang city inevitably made Su Tong wary, so he deliberately hid his aura. Because of the black brocade robe, he had to hide his aura, and even an enlightened master might not be able to detect him without looking carefully. This group of people was obviously staying in a hotel. However, the inn obviously does not have that many rooms, so it can only arrange 2 rooms and 1 large shop. When these people went upstairs, Guo Yike said solemnly, "Sir, those people just now are not simple. We must not provoke them." Several other followers were still a little unconvinced and said doubtfully, "Brother Guo, I don't think these young men and women are just people in the world. What do you know?" Guo Yi's face darkened, and the others' hearts tightened, and they suddenly did not dare to speak. Not only was Guo Yi better at kung fu than them, but he was also a seasoned veteran. They encountered a shady shop along the way and almost got made into human meat buns. Thanks to Guo Yi, he noticed something was wrong in time and took the people away immediately. Everyone usually laughed at him, but seeing that Guo Yi was really angry, no one dared to say a word. Seeing that everyone was silent, Guo Yi slowed down and said, "Sir, the wind is blowing under the feet of this group of people as they walk, but not a single raindrop is stained on their shoes. Look at the bad road outside. If you are not a top expert, you will not be able to do it at this time. The soles of my feet are already full of mud." After everyone heard this, they lowered their heads and found that the ground was wet, but there were only 2 pairs of muddy shoe prints. The other shoe prints were only slightly watermarks. After taking 2 steps, they disappeared. Now everyone couldn't help but be shocked. Su Tong also pretended to be surprised, "So awesome." After saying that, I couldn't help but hold my chin up and sighed with pity, that girl just now looks so good. "Master." Guo Yi's face changed, and he quickly reached out to cover Su Tong's mouth. "Be careful what you say." I know, what's so great about a little girl? There are plenty of them in brothels. Everyone, Hurry up and eat. When you're full, come with me. At the corner of the stairs, a man and a woman stood there with unkind expressions. Although they were far apart, Su Tong and others listened to every word they said. Nai Haitang's eyes widened and he held one hand on the hilt of the sword. You frivolous person. Junior sister, Zhao Peng held down Nai Haitang's sword-drawing hand with one hand and shook his head at her. Your injury is not healed, so don't vent your anger on these people. Ken. Nai Haitang squinted at the group of people below, staring hard at the young man eating the cake among them. He didn't know why, but the more he looked at him, the more he felt displeased with him. Junior sister, don't forget, we have other big things to do. Zhao Peng was afraid that Nai Haitang would be willful and ruin their plan, so he could only comfort him. Don't worry, as for this kid, I will naturally vent your anger on your behalf, senior brother. When Nai Haitang heard this, the anger on her face dissipated a lot at this time. She suddenly felt something strange. She lowered her head and found that senior brother Zhao Peng's hand was still on hers. Suddenly my face became hot. Zhao Peng also noticed something. When he looked at his hand, he immediately realized that he was offended and quickly took his hand back. He looked a little embarrassed, but his eyes did not move away from his junior sister Nai Haitang's face. As if aware of his senior brother's fiery eyes, Nai Haitang's heart was pounding, and he hurriedly said to go back to the room to rest, and ran away in a hurry. Looking at the junior sister hiding in the room, Zhao Peng stood there, raised his palm, put it under the bridge of his nose and took an intoxicating sniff, with an intoxicated look on his face. But in a blink of an eye, he raised his eyelids and glanced sideways at Su Tong's figure downstairs. Snort. Immediately, he snorted coldly, walked downstairs, and came to the backyard. He happened to see his junior brothers Lu Cai, Wang Yang, Dong Li, and Zhao Xian walking out of the Tongbu room. Lu Cai and the other four are not very strong, but they can be considered third-rate masters in the arena. In addition, after learning a lot of strange skills from his master, ordinary people are definitely no match for four people. After seeing the four people, Zhao Peng raised his eyebrows and stepped forward to call them. Big brother. Lu Cai and the other four saw their elder brother approaching and hurried to greet them. Zhao Peng reached out and held Lu Cai's shoulders, lowering his voice and said, You guys go out later and keep an eye on the guys outside. Find someone, give them a chance to teach them a lesson. After breakfast, Su Tong took the people out. Instead of going anywhere else, he went straight to the Chenghuang temple. Sir, what are we doing here? Su Tong raised his head, looked at the city god temple, and said to Guoyi and others, whether we can go back alive this time depends entirely on the city god. Ah! Guoyi looked up at the dilapidated city god's temple in front of him with confusion on his face. Su Tong didn't waste any time and signaled one group of them to start cleaning, while the other group went to hire carpenters and purchase paint to fix up the place. Sir, this money is all worth it? Guoyi was stunned when he saw Su Tong's extravagant efforts to build the city god's temple. He didn't know what the prince was going to do. Yes, so I have to use it on the edge. Get some more money and give the city god a new suit. Su Tong didn't care about Guoyi's bitter look and spent a lot of money. This busy work lasted a whole night, and when it was already bright and clear the next day, the city god temple had a completely new look. Even the statues were painted with a layer of gold paint, and the entire city god temple became brighter. Sir, why are we doing this? On the way back, the sky had darkened. When Guoyi calculated his accounts, he found that he had spent 300 taels of silver today, and he was heartbroken. Of course Su Tong couldn't explain it. He couldn't let his master live in a ruined temple. Besides, if you want clothes, you want gold. If you don't even have a decent appearance, who can trust you? At this moment, a plume of grey smoke came out of the street, and the grey smoke slipped into the hall through the darkness of night. Seeing Jixian coming back, Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly, glanced at the empty street behind him, raised his head thoughtfully, and saw a restaurant in front of him, grinning. "Brothers, you have worked hard today, just in time. Let's have a good meal." "Thank you, sir." The other followers didn't think as much as Guo Yi. When they heard that the food was good, they immediately became happy. "Master! Master! Ouch!" Guo Yi looked sad and almost cried. But he could only follow and walk in obediently. "What should I do? Do you want to do something?" Lu Cai popped up at one end of the street and frowned when he saw them entering the tavern. "Eldest brother means that we don't want us to make a big deal out of it. It's better to wait until they come out before taking action." The four of them discussed it and decided to wait here. The cold wind blew in the night, and the four of them felt so empty in their stomachs that they were all covered in cold weather. Just when they were getting a little impatient, they saw a man walking out in front of the restaurant. It was the young man that the senior brother mentioned. As soon as the young man went out, he looked around and then walked towards the alley on the side. "Ha, he's finally out, let's go. Follow him, beat him up today, and give senior sister a good vent." Lu Cai's eyes lit up. After saying this, he followed up with 3 people. The 4 of them followed Su Tong's figure and walked all the way into the alley. They were also talented and brave people, and they followed closer and closer without worrying about any trouble. But as soon as I walked out of the alley, I turned around and realized that it was a dead end. "Where are the people?" The 4 of them felt surprised. Suddenly Lu Cai moved his ears and put them behind the wall. There seemed to be some sound behind the wall. "I wonder if someone climbed over the wall and got in?" "Humph, they jumped over the wall and stole. We caught them right in front of them. We sent them to the government and charged them with theft." Thinking of this, Lu Cai waved his hand, and the 4 of them tapped their toes and jumped over the wall easily. As soon as I landed, I saw that there was a rice warehouse behind the yard. That rustling sound came from the rice barn. The 4 of them looked for the sound and walked to the warehouse door, only to hear the noise inside getting louder and louder. Seeing this, the 4 of them looked at each other. Lu Cai took a deep breath and kicked the door open. "You brat, how dare you steal?" hiss. Just in the middle of speaking, Lu Cai's voice suddenly stopped, and then he took a breath of air. In the dark rice warehouse, pairs of red eyes were staring at him, and as far as he could see, there were densely packed rats. These mice were eating so well that they were startled by Lu Cai and the 4 of them. Then, as if they were stimulated by something, they screamed and swarmed down. "Run!" Seeing the black mass of rats rushing down, Lu Cai's face turned green. No matter how high his martial arts skills were, he couldn't withstand so many rats rushing towards him. One mouse would not be able to chew 4 of them in one bite. He screamed immediately, turned around and ran out. As soon as they ran away, the rats behind them also rushed out in a swarm. "Good guy, are all the rats in Yuyang City holding a meeting here today? It's so dark that they rush out in a swarm, like a torrent under the night sky." This was originally the government's rice warehouse, so it was naturally guarded. Hearing the noise, he immediately rushed over and saw the 4 Lu Cai people running over in a panic from a distance. "Stop!" The officers and soldiers raised their swords and wanted to call the 4 people to stop, but at this time, the 4 people could not care so much. Seeing the officers and soldiers blocking the way, Lu Cai yelled, "Get out of my way!" I saw the blade of the sword at the waist was raised, and the knives in the hands of the 2 officers and soldiers flew out. The 4 of them flew across the wall, stepped on the officers and soldiers' heads, and jumped more than 10 meters away. The 2 officers and soldiers didn't know what was going on. When they saw this, they didn't care about the knives in their hands. They immediately turned around and gave chase, shouting as they ran, "Catch the thief!" At this moment, the entire granary became lively, and large numbers of officers and soldiers rushed out from all directions. Lucy Ai and the others wanted to explain, but at this moment, a scream suddenly came from behind. All the officers and soldiers looked back, and then they saw the dark rats coming out of nowhere from behind. These rats had red eyes and would bite anyone they saw. The officers and soldiers were also in a mess. They had never seen so many rats in their entire lives. Set fire quickly. I don't know who had the bright idea to propose setting fire to it. Result. It's gone. The people of Yuyang City saw a flame rising into the sky from a distance, and immediately rushed over with buckets of water. At this moment, the governor of Yuyang City was drinking with several subordinate officials, discussing when the new river inspector would take office. Sir, I heard that the river inspector sent this time is Prince Gong's eldest son. The prince is not the prince, he is just a young boy. Just wait until he comes and fool around for a few times. If he doesn't know how to promote, dealing with him will not be easy. The governor Zhang Zhen was full of disdain, and he even ignored the so-called prince. Who is the person behind him? It's the Wu family. As long as the Wu family doesn't fall, who dares to touch him? Not to mention the death of a small river inspector, even if a few unworthy princes were killed, no one would dare to do anything to him. Did your majesty kill too few people from the Li family? Perhaps because he was drunk, Zhang Zhen had no control over what he said. Fortunately, the people who could sit here were his confidants. Otherwise, if this sentence was spread, even 10 heads would not be enough to chop him off. Sir, it's not good. At this moment, someone rushed in a panic outside the door. You bastard, you are so panicked. If the sky falls, it will be my fault in Yuyang City. Zhang Zhen's face smelled of alcohol and he spoke wantonly. Just as he was getting excited, the official who came to report could not care so much. He quickly grabbed Zhang Zhen and said, Sir, something big has happened. The granary has leaked. When Zhang Zhen heard this, he immediately curled his lips, raised his hand and slapped his subordinate on the face. Water leaked in the granary. Just go and put out the fire if there is water in the granary. Notify Wu Haopu to put out the fire. What's the big deal and make a fuss? What's the etiquette of it? Sir, it is, the granary of Baikan. Baikan granary, these 4 words made Zhang Zhen startled, and then he was startled, his whole body trembled, and he suddenly woke up from the alcohol. Baikan granary. At this time, the expressions of other subordinates also changed drastically. Yuyang is an important place for garrisoning troops, and the granary in Baikan is used for this year's military rations. If something goes wrong, even the Wu family will have a hard time protecting him. Even if it wasn't military rations, if a fire broke out in the warehouse, he would not be able to escape punishment if anyone in the court tried to tamper with him. Zhang Zhen immediately panicked and immediately asked someone to organize manpower to put out the fire. When Zhang Zhen hurried over with his people, his heart went cold. He saw that the fire was getting bigger and bigger, and it had begun to spread to the surrounding houses. Seeing this, Zhang Zhen's heart trembled, and he didn't bother to ask about the cause of the fire. After thinking about it, he immediately called his confidants, Quick, go and invite the great sage Zhuhe. The fire grew bigger and bigger. Many of the people who put out the fire found that as soon as they rushed in, there were countless rats inside, and the black mass rushed towards them, almost frightening people to death. These rats rushed outside in groups, so that people did not dare to put out the fire. Headmaster, why don't you let these mice go to the homes of rich people and cause some trouble? With the experience of Fu Xian last time, Dia and the others have summed up their own method. As long as those wealthy people take the lead in donating money and materials, their reputation will soon spread. This is the same as whether a company in reality can find angel investment. Su Tong was about to nod when he suddenly noticed something. He raised his head and saw that at some point, thick dark clouds began to form in the sky. Huh! Ya also noticed something unusual at this moment, that river demon is really quite capable, he can actually control the wind and rain. After saying this, Ya inevitably said sourly, it seems that this river demon has really eaten a lot of incense in the world. If this continues for a few years, there is no chance that he will cultivate the divine way. Humph, if you want to become a god, it's a beautiful idea. Su Tong looked at the heavy rain that had fallen, and jumped up. His figure was like a big rock, and he arrived at the city god's temple in 2 steps. It's better to come early than to come well. Master, you can take office today. Su Tong took out the being killing order and saw a wisp of the soul behind the killing order. Su Tong pasted the killing order on the statue of the city god. Immediately, the divine light burst forth, and the originally dull statue suddenly gave people a sense of indignity under the divine light. Then Su Tong walked out of the door, stood in front of the door, opened his mouth and took a long breath. He saw the air flowing around him. Su Tong's chest muscles bulged and he shouted toward the sky, "The city god has arrived. Sorry to get up early in the morning to do nucleic acid testing. I queued for more than 2 hours. I came back and had lunch before going to bed. As a result, I woke up a little late and the update was a little late." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 619. Last time at the Mei family crematorium, the goddess shouted, awakening the grandpa to come to the world. This is called calling the gods. Just like the Taoist consecration ceremony, through complex rituals, the sculptures can inherit the aura of heaven and earth and create the well-being of all people. A sculpture without light is just a clay tire. The difference is that neither the Taigong lantern nor the city god's temple need to be consecrated. The origin of the Taigong lamp itself is very mysterious. It was left by a monk in the Mei family. He used the beams as the lamp poles, with the Taigong's shadow pierced on the lampshade, and lit the lamp with the fire of the soul. The city god's temple was a sculpture built by Emperor Taizong's edict to the world. When it was first built, there was already a statue of the god, but there was no city god in office. Therefore, the two do not need complicated rituals. Just a shout to reveal their identity is enough to awaken Chengxiu and connect with heaven and earth. With a physique that surpassed that of the Grand Master, Su Tong raised his energy, and roared, forming a huge airflow, like a thunder that created the world. The entire Yuyang city resonated and trembled. The city god has arrived. Immediately, the divine light surged on the city god statue, wisps of divine light shot straight into the sky, and a huge divine power penetrated into the dark clouds in the sky. Oh! There was a muffled scream in the clouds, and the dark clouds dispersed immediately, the heavy rain stopped immediately, and a large river outside Yuyang city began to bubble. After a moment, a huge turtle head poked its head out, its 2 small eyes staring at the divine light in Yuyang city full of resentment. The city god has appeared. The people in the city stared at the divine radiance that broke through the sky, and their eyes widened for a moment. Everyone knew that city god temples were built with great fanfare under Taizong's decree back then. There are rumors about the city god from time to time in various places, but few people in Yuyang have seriously paid homage to the city god. The gods have appeared. An old lady knelt on the ground and kowtowed. She might not know what the city god was, but she just knew he was a god. This time, others also followed suit. What are you praying for? Quickly put out the fire. The governor Zhang Zhen and several of his subordinates looked at each other. Seeing that the heavy rain had dispersed after a while, they were so anxious that they were about to burn up. At this time, the city god, even the Jade Emperor, could not stand up to his black gauze hat. Suddenly, there was only a rumble, and the wall of the warehouse that was originally on fire collapsed. A thick cloud of dust rolled up on the ground, and the fire was immediately suppressed. The fire is out? Everyone was shocked when they saw the fire extinguished. It was really the city god who showed up. Oh, so many rats. At this time, someone saw countless densely packed rats crawling out from under the ruins, and everyone turned pale with fear. Even Zhang Zhen and others were frightened by this group of rats, and their faces turned pale when they saw the mighty rats rushing towards them. Squeak! Countless densely packed rats sprang out from the streets and formed a torrent, but they did not hurt anyone, but turned and ran towards the city god's temple. Wait for everyone to follow the mouse and rush to the door of the city god's temple. All these mice were seen crawling on the ground, as if they were worshipping. At first glance, I found that the Chenghuang temple had been renovated at some point, and the dilapidated temple looked as bright as new in the sunshine. Looking inside again, I saw the city god sitting in the middle, his golden body shining brightly in the sun. The city god really showed up. Everyone immediately followed the mouse and knelt down. Su Tong hid behind the door and watched. Seeing that the effect was achieved, he signaled to the auspicious people to let the mice disperse. Ji Xiang shook his body, and the rats dispersed immediately, disappearing into a nearby mouse hole. Without these mice, people became bolder, walked into the city god's temple one after another, and began to kneel down and worship. After a while, the incense burner was already burning high incense. Senior brother, didn't the local city god not take office? And although the city god orders the 5th division, when can he order the rats again? I'm afraid someone is pretending to be the city god. Not far away, Nai Haitang, senior brother Zhao Peng, and third senior brother Li Xinliang stood in the corner and observed. As members of the Hunshan prison, they knew very well that the Yang place was special. The city god had always been vacant. Why the city god suddenly took office was so sudden that they felt extremely strange. Moreover, controlling rats is not something that a righteous god should do. No matter how you look at it, it looks like the tactics used by cults to control people's hearts. Thinking back to the Modeo sect they were recently investigating, Nai Haitang's suspicions were not unreasonable. However, after Zhao Peng observed carefully, he rejected Nai Haitang's idea. No, if someone pretended to be the city god, the city god's temple would have collapsed a long time ago. Look at the bright and upright light on the city god's statue. It's the image of a righteous god returning to his throne, and it's definitely not something that can be seen by some ghostly spirit. As soon as Zhao Peng said these words, the three of them felt uncertain about the appearance of the city god. But since they are righteous gods, they have no right to interfere. Moreover, it is also a good thing for them that the righteous god returns to his throne. There is a city god in the city, which can bring peace to the area. It is said that to deal with the Moda cult, we need to borrow the power of the city god. As for the method of controlling mice, Zheng Shen would definitely not use such methods. Thinking of the loud roar just now, it was like a thunderbolt from the blue. It was not something that an ordinary person could shout out. It means that there must be someone else behind this, and maybe someone is manipulating it behind the scenes. Zhao Peng's analysis was very thorough. Although he didn't understand what happened, he probably figured out some clues. As the three of them were talking, they saw Lu Cai and the others walking out of the street with embarrassed faces. When they saw senior brother Zhao Peng and the others, the four of them lowered their heads and hurriedly stepped forward. Senior brother, what's wrong with you, looking like this? Third senior brother Li Xinliang couldn't help but ask when he saw the four of them looking embarrassed. Lu Cai and the four of them explained what happened last night with a grimace on their faces. Sir, this. On the other side, Zhang Zhen and others stood outside the Chenghuang temple and watched, looking at each other for a while. These officials inevitably began to murmur in their hearts. They had an agreement with the great sage Zhu He. If there are foreign teachers preaching locally, they must do their best to suppress it. But this is the city god. Emperor Xianzong personally issued an edict to elevate the city god and ordered the world to build city god temples. They can't point to the city god temple and say it's a demon. Furthermore, Zhang Zhen didn't have time to think about these things at the moment. The Baikan granary was burned. Even though the fire was extinguished, the food in the granary was probably burned out. It was all military rations. Thinking of this, Zhang Zhen's head was as big as a bucket, and he didn't care about the agreement with the great sage Zhu He. He shouted angrily, "What this and that, go back home." With that said, the group of people walked back, but within 2 steps, they saw the officials from Baikang, who were already in disgrace, being pressed down by 2 officers and soldiers and rushing towards them. According to current laws, buildings in government warehouses and warehouses are not allowed to light fires, and offenders will be sentenced to 3 years in prison. Those who cause losses will be punished with dereliction of duty and exiled for 3,000 miles. "Sir, it's unjust, we didn't set the fire." The official in charge of Baikang was so frightened that he almost peed his pants. For such a huge responsibility, it would not be an exaggeration to sentence him to death. "Not you." Zhang Zhen's eyes were filled with evil fire, and he said coldly, "It's not you, is it me? You idiot, just wait to die." Hearing this, the official was about to cry. In fact, the fire was actually caused by an official below. Seeing the rats coming, he subconsciously held a torch to drive them away. As a result, the ignited rats ran around everywhere, causing the fire. As for who was the leader, he could no longer trace this matter, but if he couldn't find a way to excuse himself at the moment, he and the officials who guarded the food would be exiled at the least, or be killed at the worst. Thinking of this, the official suddenly saw a group of people on the street corner not far away from the corner of his eye. His eyes suddenly flashed, as if he had grasped some life-saving straw. "Sir, it was them, they set the fire. They sneaked into the granary last night and set fire to the grain." Zhang Zhen heard the words and immediately took a closer look. Sure enough, he saw 4 people covered in black ash. At first glance, they had come out of the fire scene. He also had a sword in his hand, which showed that he was not a good person at first glance. Seeing this, Zhang Zhen narrowed his eyes and said to a subordinate, "Go and notify the Yamen to arrest the person." As soon as Su Tong raised his voice today, no one in the entire Yuyang city knew that the city god had appeared. The enthusiasm that the people suddenly burst out exceeded Su Tong's expectations. In just one morning, Master has gained a lot of incense merit. Although the amount is not as good as that of Fu Xian, isn't this just the beginning? Dia and the others looked at the steady stream of pilgrims coming in to offer incense, and they were almost crying. They had not had incense for a long time, but when they thought about having incense tonight, they all grinned and waited eagerly. Don't worry, this is just the beginning. In the huge Yuyang city, with such a large population, no one can compete with us. The next step is to find ways to grow bigger and stronger and create greater glory. Master, what you mean is... Da Ya understood the idea and was about to say something. Suddenly there was a commotion outside. I saw a woman striding in holding a piece of paper filled with densely written small characters. The people around me were stunned for a moment when they saw the sign in the woman's hand, and then they all moved out of the way. Su Tong squinted and saw that the woman was young, but her skin was very dark, and her hands were covered with thick calluses and frostbite. Woman's hand holds a sign. I saw the word injustice written in blood on the paper. As soon as he entered the door, he knelt down in front of the city god's hall with a plop, staring straight at the city god in front of him without saying a word. When the others saw this, they couldn't help but sigh, and someone stepped forward to persuade her, "Sun Yang, this case has been closed, what do you want?" As a result, when Sun Yang turned around, her black and white eyes made people panic, and she gritted her teeth and said word by word, "The sky is unfair and the officialdom is corrupt. I have no way to sue. Since the city god has appeared, I ask the city god to administer justice to me. If it is not answered, then the city god is being unfair, and the daughter of the people is banging her head against the south wall, even Juya Yinko who is suing wants justice. As he spoke, he threw the paper in his hand into the incense burner. But at this time, a quick-eyed hand took the paper, swept it away in his hand, and said after a moment, I have taken this case, you go back, and come back in 3 days. Sun Yang looked up and saw that the speaker was not only young, but also dressed like a rich man. She couldn't help but stare and said, Who are you? What does this matter have to do with you? Su Tong didn't answer, and just said, Believe it or not, it will happen in 3 days. After saying that, no matter what Sun Yang was thinking, she got up and walked out the door. Putting the case of Sun Yang aside, Su Tong had just walked out of the Chenghuang temple and was about to meet Guo Yi and others. As a result, as soon as he took 2 steps, he saw a large number of officers and soldiers suddenly pouring out from around him. These officers and soldiers rushed out and instantly blocked the road in front. They saw that a group of people inside had been surrounded. Su Tong stood on tiptoe and looked inside. It was the 4 guys who followed him last night, as well as Nai Haitang et al. Seeing that there were melons to eat, Su Tong looked around and saw a dry goods seller nearby. He simply walked over, threw a handful of copper coins, grabbed a handful of melon seeds, sat down and gnawed. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 620. What are you doing? Zhao Peng and others were also confused at this moment. They didn't know why officers and soldiers suddenly rushed out to arrest them. What are you doing? You are so bold. You dared to set fire to the warehouse last night. According to the law, if the damage caused by arson exceeds 5 horses, you will be exiled for 2,000 miles. If you lose more than 10 horses, you will be punished by hanging. The leader of the official was dark-skinned and spoke with a loud voice that made people's ears hurt. As soon as these words came out, even the melon eaters were surprised. It turns out you set the fire. In this era, most buildings were made of wood, and the biggest fear was fire. Therefore, the laws regarding arson were extremely strict, and the common people had 0 tolerance for arsonists. That year, a fire broke out in Zhenzhou, burning down half the city and killing an unknown number of people. Therefore, what ordinary people fear most is fire. A fire may destroy their century-old business. When I heard that the fire last night was set by these people, my eyes immediately turned red. Set fire? It wasn't us, we didn't set fire. Lu Cai and the others were also officials, so they naturally knew how serious the crime of arson was, so they immediately denied it. But the leading official didn't care about this, whether it was you who set the fire or not, we will find out when you come back with us. How dare you, who are you? How dare you take us? Now Lu Cai and others felt guilty. There were quite a few people who had seen the 4 of them last night. If the other party confirmed that they were the ones who set the fire, they would be in big trouble. You must reveal your identity immediately. But Zhao Peng on the side stood in front of Lu Cai and the other 4, since you said it was our brothers who set the fire, let us brothers go with you, but this matter has nothing to do with us, so just take them away, adults. At this time, Lu Cai and others couldn't help but widen their eyes and looked at their senior brother in disbelief. Even Nai Haitang couldn't believe that the senior brother actually pushed the 4 junior brothers out like this. But in the face of the doubtful glances of his junior brothers, his expression remained unchanged. He patted Lu Cai's shoulder and whispered in a low voice, just in time, you go and have a look inside the cell. As for the matter of arson, don't worry, I will take care of this matter myself. I will help you clarify. Cell. Although Lu Cai didn't know why the senior brother wanted them to go to the cell, he still nodded and agreed out of trust in the senior brother. Well, you think this is a vegetable market? Here you come to bargain, and you take everyone away without leaving anyone behind. The black-faced officer at the head was obviously not as easy to talk to as Zhao Peng thought. With a wave of his hand, a group of officers immediately surrounded him. However, Zhao Peng suddenly took a step forward. No one even saw clearly what happened. Zhao Peng's hand was on the shoulder of the black-faced officer. "Look clearly, what is this?" Zhao Peng lifted up his clothes and exposed the sign in his arms to the black-faced officer. "You are, oh, please be gentle." Before the black-faced officer could say anything, he felt his shoulder being pinched by Zhao Peng's fingers, causing a sharp pain. Zhao Peng let go of his hand. "If you know, don't tell. Ask what you should ask, don't ask what you shouldn't." At this moment, the black-faced officer's expression flickered in and out, and he waved his hands around, "Take the four of them away." The others didn't know what to do when they saw this, but now that they had spoken, they immediately put away their swords and forced Lu Cai and the four of them to leave Hunshan prison. Although Zhao Peng's movements were fast, he could not escape Su Tong's eyes. At a glance, he saw the word Hunshan prison written on the sign in Zhao Peng's arms. No wonder they wanted to track down the Maduo cult, they turned out to be people from Hunshan prison. Su Tong thought about it and sneered secretly in his heart, "I was worried that no one would stand up and be a target. Now that you have jumped out yourself, it will be much easier." Thinking of this, he already had a preliminary plan in mind. "It's him again." Nai Haitang was anxious when he saw Lu Cai and the others being taken away, but when he turned around, he saw Su Tong sitting aside and watching the fun. He had already noticed that this guy was unhappy, but seeing that this guy was still watching the fun made him feel very uncomfortable. However, Zhao Peng had no time to take care of this and hurriedly left with Nai Haitang and junior brother Li Xin Liang. The three of them left, and Su Tong wandered back to the inn. As soon as he returned, he saw Guo Yi rushing up to him and holding his arm. "Your Majesty, where have you been?" "The city god's temple has a ghost. I'll go watch the fun." It's okay not to mention the city god's temple. When it came to the city god's temple, Guo Yi found it incredible. They had just finished repairing the city god's temple when the master of the city god appeared. He quickly pulled Su Tong inside and asked in a low voice, "Your Majesty, how did the city god appear? How do I know if a spirit appears? Call everyone here, let's go out to work." "Are you still going to the city god's temple?" "No, let's go to the river and have a look." Su Tong read Yang Sunyang's paper and found out that the matter was very simple. Yang Sunyang's husband was an honest fisherman. Because he could not pay the money offered by the so-called Heshenzi, he was dragged into doing coolies by the people of the Heshenzi. As a result, she died inexplicably. Yang Sunyang had no way to complain about this matter, but was beaten up and finally ran to the Chenghuang temple. The reason why Su Tong took over this case was that it was a side mission. Side mission 2, Third sister complains. Mission description: Sister Zhou's husband died under strange circumstances, but the Yang prefect only said that he slipped and drowned. Sister Zhou had no way to sue and could only seek help. Mission requirements: find the cause of death of Sister Zhou's husband, Maliozi, and seek justice for Sister Zhou. Mission time: 3 days. Mission penalty: none. On the other hand, the city god's temple has just opened, so we can't let Sister Zhou run into it and die, otherwise it will be a bad thing. So today I simply went to the river to have a look. By the way, I want to think of a way to find out where the river demon is. As soon as they heard that the prince was going to do something serious, Guo Yi and others immediately became energetic and accompanied Su Tong to the river. Yu Yang claims to have 9 rivers, but there are actually not that many. However, not far to the north after leaving the city gate, there is the mouth of the Sancha River. It is the intersection of Xia River, South Canal, and North Canal, and is the starting point of Haihe River. It leads up to the capital and down to the seaside. Of course, the capital in this era is not a good place. Therefore, The commercial aspect is not as developed as it was in the future. However, Tianjin's fishery is quite developed. In addition, it is an important town for garrisoning troops, and repairing river channels can strengthen maritime transportation capabilities and improve people's livelihood development. It's just that in the past 2 years, every repair has killed someone. The 3 river inspectors before Su Tong all died inexplicably. That's why Su Tongke never went to the governor's yamen to report, but planned to start from another angle, first find a way to kill the river demon, and then report to the governor's yamen. When the group came to the mouth of the river, they saw that the river was full of mud, and some men with bare arms were digging hard on the bank. If there was any slight neglect, someone would pick up a whip and whip it down hard. "Sir, these people are all from the Hessian division." Guo Yi seemed to be inquiring a lot. One look at the badges on these people, and he knew that these were probably the Hessianzi, who the common people said was more terrifying than the river god. The so-called Hessian division is actually an agency set up by the yamen with a clever name. It has neither formal reporting nor formal official assignments, and the people it recruits are all those gangsters. These people are not good people to begin with, but after putting on official clothes, their behavior is even more unscrupulous. Seeing that an old man was so tired that he was dizzy, the other man went up and beat him severely, not caring about his life or death. Bah, these scumbags! When Guo Yi saw this, he couldn't help but curse secretly. People like him despised these people. "What are you looking at? Get out of here!" Just as he was talking, a supervisor came over and signaled Su Tong and the others to leave. He did not take Su Tong and his party seriously in his words. They are the river gods, who are also considered officials. They are not just officials, but also represent the river gods. No matter whose son you are, you must take a detour when you see them. Su Tong glanced at the man, raised a smile, stepped forward, and casually took out a piece of silver and gave it to him. When the other party saw the white money, his eyes widened. He didn't show any politeness to Su Tong. He snatched the money and put it in his arms. He raised his head and wanted to point his nostrils at Su Tong. "What's the matter? In this case, I have a friend who was sent here to dig a canal without paying. I wonder if I can be accommodating and release him?" Su Tong asked with narrowed eyes. "This matter is difficult." The man looked at Su Tong and said with curled lips. Su Tong took out another ingot of silver and presented it to him. Looking at the silver, the man nodded with satisfaction. "You are sensible, but I don't care about this. I will take you to see my master." "Hey, good, good." Su Tong nodded repeatedly and followed the man inside. When he reached the river embankment, he saw 6 or 7 people sitting in a small shed. There were wine and meat on the table, and they were eating and drinking. The man signaled Su Tong to wait a moment, then walked to the shed and whispered a few words into the bearded man's ear. Although he was far away, Su Tong could hear it clearly. "Brother, here comes a big fat sheep, rich." The bearded man nodded calmly when he heard this, and then motioned for Su Tong and others to come over. First he glanced at Su Tong, and then at the dozen or so people behind Su Tong, but he didn't take them seriously. If it really mattered, why come here and talk to the magistrate? It would be better than the emperor's edict. If you want to pick someone up, that's fine. Just give me 300 taels of silver and take the person away. 300 taels. You are crazy. Guo Yi was already very sensitive to money figures. When he heard this, his expression suddenly changed. "Keep shouting, what kind of place do you think this is? If you can get money, take it. If you can't get it, you just come in like this. Each person has 50 taels of silver. If you can't get it out, don't leave." The bearded man glared, slapped the table and cursed. Su Tong waved his hand to signal Guo Yi not to be angry, and walked forward with a smile. 300 taels is too cheap, at least 500 taels. The bearded man was startled, glanced at Su Tong, and immediately grinned and said, "Hey, you're pretty cool, tell me, what's your friend's name?" As he said that, the bearded man took out a roster from under his butt. "Oh, my friend's name is simply Malioza." "Ma what?" The bearded man was startled and suddenly raised his head. As soon as he raised his head, Su Tong slapped him in the face. "Ma Dong Mei. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 621. Chapter 621. I will stop updating for a day tomorrow. I read the plot and felt that the original design was too complicated. I plan to reconceive the outline of the script tomorrow, so I will temporarily stop updating for a day. In addition, this script will probably not be too big, about 60 to 70 chapters in length. The theme of the plan still needs to be around team conflict, overpowering techniques, and praying magic battles. Complete the mission by the way and get important clues about the Buddhist treasures. So Yang should be limited to about 15 chapters, but when I wrote it down, I found that the progress of the plot was a bit slow, so I wrote it according to this plot. Good guys, it's 30 chapters. It was too procrastinating, so I stopped updating for a day to sort out my thoughts and find a point to pick up the plot. The following are a few comments and questions I have seen recently. I will reply to them collectively. Well, I remember in this chapter, someone mentioned who was the one who repaired the money model. Some said it was Puyi, but no, that person was in Luoyang, and Puyi did not die in Luoyang. This script will fill this hole. Is this book now considered to be in its middle stage? Well, just enter. When will this book be finished? It won't be too long, I'll finish it in the middle period, and the later period is actually very short. I don't like procrastination, so I plan to finish the book as soon as I finish writing the story, which is about 3 million to 4 million words. Anyway, if you look at my previous 2 books, it's almost the same number. Is the heroine a male? Not really. Is there a female protagonist? It depends on the situation. If it's not suitable, I won't give it to the heroine. Let nature take its course. I don't have an outline. I just write the beginning and follow the development of the characters and events. What is the maximum level of a certified player? This question can be spoiled in advance. The highest certified player is level 9. And only high certified players will push the script back in history step by step. This involves the setting of the final ending of the book, so I won't go into details. After passing this script world, I will give you the answer. Can it break out? I'll start adding more updates after I sort out the plot. Remember that I owed you a few tickets before, so I'll make up for them as much as possible. There has been a high incidence of the epidemic recently, and I hope everyone can protect themselves. Come on. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 622. Boom. Even though Su Tong held back his strength, when everyone came back to their senses, they found that the bearded man had flown 10 meters away and hit his head on a rock, cracking his head on the spot. Now not only the gangsters like Heshenzi were dumbfounded, but even Guoyi couldn't help but his pupils twitched. That bearded man was fat and strong, weighing at least 200 pounds. He could not have done this slap even if he had thrust it 10 meters away. Looking at the prince in front of him again, his eyes were full of strangeness. Is this the prince he knew who only wanted to be an official? But Guoyi had no time to think. Seeing the prince moving his hands, he immediately shouted, "Hit me." After that, Guoyi took the lead and rushed forward. With Guoyi's roar, the other followers woke up and drew out their swords and rushed forward. What kind of thing is Heshenzi? To put it bluntly, they are just a group of temporary workers, and they are also outsourced. There are neither serious official positions nor any professional training. They recruit only those idle gangsters from Yuyang City, whose purpose is to bully the people and let them take money. These people are usually good at bullying ordinary people, but when faced with well-trained followers like Guo Yi, it's like an egg hitting a rock. In a matter of seconds, they were beaten to the ground and screamed in agony. We are the River God Division, ah. The man who had brought Su Tong and the others here was regarded as a key target of Guo Yi's care. Seeing that he could not be beaten, he immediately began to report his identity. These people were used to being domineering and tyrannical on a daily basis, and when they suddenly encountered a tough situation, they still didn't realize it in their minds. Su Tong dared to kill even people, so he didn't care about the dog skin on their bodies. You're such a bastard, you're using chicken feathers as arrows. I hate you, you idiot. Guo Yi spoke a classic Sichuan greeting, rounded his arms, and put his two big mouths down, making a crackling sound. In the blink of an eye, the man's face was swollen like a pig's head, his mouth was full of blood, and his front teeth were knocked out. Go out. Keep them, find a rope and tie them up. You guys go and catch the ones by the river. Don't let them escape. Promise. Several followers turned around and left. Although their strength was not high, they could be considered third-rate masters in the arena in the late Qing dynasty. Naturally, they were able to deal with these ruffians easily. In a short time, they killed a group of people on the river embankment. He was caught in a big way. Also coming with them were the laborers digging channels on the river embankments. These people also felt strange that these were people from the Hessian division. How could anyone dare to touch them? Rather than being curious, I felt a bit of hope. After a while, people were already standing around, staring at Su Tong and others with dull eyes, obviously still doubtful about the identity of Su Tong and his party. Your Majesty, what are we going to do? Guo Yi walked up to Su Tong, his voice was much softer than before, and his eyes looking at Su Tong were less worried and more awe-inspiring. That slap left a deep impression on him. With his strength, it would not be a problem to knock an ordinary person 10 meters away with one punch. But he definitely couldn't be as understated as the prince. Su Tong did not answer Guo Yi, but walked up to the tightly tied people in front of him, squatted down, and carefully examined their faces. I ask you how Malioza died. Several people looked at each other for a moment after hearing this, and then lowered their heads. Seeing that these people still refused to talk, Su Tong didn't waste any words and gave Guo Yi a look. Guo Yi immediately understood. As the guards of Prince Gong's mansion, they were not good at torture and extorting confessions. However, Guo Yi still didn't believe how capable they were of dealing with these ruffians. He stepped forward, grabbed the hand of one of them, and then twisted it hard. Ah! Screams rang out, and several people's eyes widened, but no one spoke. Hey, you guys, why are you so stubborn? Guo Yi became a little angry when he saw this. The prince was watching from behind, wondering how he could not even do such a small thing well. As the saying goes, 10 fingers are connected to the heart. I will break it off one by one. If you don't believe it, they won't speak. They immediately continued to twist down, and screams continued for a while, but these people's mouths seemed to be sewn shut, and they refused to say a word. It's useless for you to do this. An old man came over and said to Guo Yi. Guo Yi and others looked back and saw that this was the old man who had been whipped by them just now by the river. Lord of the land. Su Tong glanced at it and knew that the old man was possessed by the land without opening the life icon. I saw Didi walking in front of Su Tong, bending down to pay respect to Su Tong, and then continued, Yuyang people are very aggressive and fierce. They are all people who have been beaten by knives. They are not afraid of this. These gangsters can enjoy a good life and get along well in Yuyang, not because they can fight but because of their ruthlessness. In the past, when there was no Hessiansee, these bastards would always go to restaurants and eat as soon as they were full. No one dared to ask them for money. Why? Because the shopkeeper wanted money, they pulled out their knives and cut off their own ears as money. As the name suggests, this gold ingot is worth 10 years of food. What? If it's not enough, then keep going. I'll give you the knife and you just cut. If he screams in pain in the middle, he won't hang around here anymore. But if you use a knife, even if you hurt someone with a knife, he will still blackmail you for the rest of your life. If you kill him, you will be involved in a life lawsuit. Killing in full public view is an ironclad rule that cannot be changed by any dynasty or generation. If you don't dare, then you won't be able to ask for money if he comes to eat here from now on. If you think about people opening a small restaurant business, it won't be able to withstand such hardships. Most of them will be treated as a loss of money and a disaster. If it really kills people, can the restaurant still operate? Even if you don't pay with your life, you can't escape jail. Doing business means being friendly and making money, so when I met them, they all chose to make peace with each other. What? What should I do if I really encounter someone crazy? What else can I do? I'll give you my life. So even though these people from the Hessian division are all gangsters, it is not something that ordinary people can do. They are not afraid of broken arms and hands, let alone a few fingers. When the Tutu Gong said this, the people of the River God division on the ground, even if their noses and faces were bruised and swollen, they could not help but raise their heads, with a look of energy in their eyes. I can't beat you, but I am not a coward. If I am allowed to live if you live today, I will kill you another day. Now Guoyi was in trouble. These people were obviously cutthroats, and they were not afraid no matter how hard they tried. Seeing that they didn't say anything, Su Tong turned to look at Tutu Gong. How did Malioza die? Old Bangza. Don't talk nonsense. Looking at the old man who suddenly stood up, several people suddenly panicked. Although they did this very covertly, there was no guarantee that someone would know something. Everyone was glaring at them, with the attitude that if you dare to say nonsense, we will kill your whole family. But the old man in front of them was not the one they had just beaten, but the landowner of Yuyang City. The landowner didn't care about the revenge of these people, and he couldn't get revenge on himself anyway. When Su Tong asked, he couldn't help stamping his feet, and looked at the spacious river behind him with resentment. Isn't it better to be tied to the boat by these people and sent away? He went into the river to feed that bastard. It turns out that Zhang Zhen and the others established the River God division in order to make money, and asked fishermen to pay silver to protect safety. If they don't have money to pay the silver and go fishing, they won't care if the river god eats them. As time went by, those fishermen and farmers who had no money no longer dared to go fishing. Now what if the river god is hungry and doesn't have enough to eat? So the river god division used the excuse that they didn't pay the silver as an excuse to arrest them and build the river channel. In fact, they tricked the people into tricking them, knocked them unconscious at night, and threw them into the river to feed the river god. Hearing this, everyone was angry. In the past, these bastards were nothing but common people. After all, they had the support of the government, but they dared to do such a sinful thing. It was simply crazy. Beasts. You actually feed your fellow villagers to the bastard. Young dog food guy, your uncle. Seeing that everyone was completely angry, Hessiansee and the others began to feel scared. If this matter was spread, it would be an exaggeration to say that they would be reduced to ashes. So someone hurriedly defended, "Nonsense, it's all nonsense, we don't have it." After speaking, he glared at the earthly master, "You old man, you have no money to pay the tribute, and you are lazy at work. At this time, you are clearly trying to confuse the public with your lies. Just wait until the prefect knows that you dare to commit the following crime. You will be punished. I'm going to sentence you to being exiled from the army." snored. Seeing that they dared to deny it, the landowner did not argue with them, but said meaningfully, "You have done all the bad things, but you don't know that there is a God 3 feet above your head." Unexpectedly, as soon as these words came out, it seemed to be a reminder to them, and they cheered up, "Yes, we are the people of the river god. If you do this, you will be punished by the river god. You are so brave. We have the river god at our back, and the prefect is above us. Who are you? You dare to fight us?" As soon as these words came out, everyone who was still full of anger suddenly became silent. Hessiansy, this is backed by gods and officials. One is responsible for life, the other is responsible for death. How can these people fight? Oh, let's put it this way, the magistrate has tacitly approved of your disregard for human life and throwing people into the river to feed the river god. Su Tong crossed his arms, looking like he suddenly realized something. No, don't talk nonsense about things that don't exist. These gangsters are not stupid. They are all veterans. When they realized that this was a trick from Su's fairy tale, they immediately denied it. Seeing how stubborn these people were at this point, Su Tong couldn't help but sneer. In fact, if he is willing, he can just let Dia use the charm technique to make them confess their sins obediently. Even when it comes to torture to extract confessions, Su Tong is much more professional than Guo Yi and others. A small knife can make them understand how beautiful the meaning of life is. But Su Tong did not do this because doing so seemed too amateurish. As an official who is devoted to serving as an official and hopes to be the character of Master Qing Tian, Su Tong hopes that he can play the image of Li Zhen well in such details. Instead of simply treating yourself as a player or a tourist. Only by truly going deep into the script and immersing yourself in the character of this identity can you experience the fun of script killing. This is why I love the script world so much. Only here can I fully play every role. So Su Tong continued to ask with narrowed eyes. What kind of river gods did you just say that you are backed by the river god? Let me ask you, this river god has a decree from the imperial court and an imperial edict from the emperor. Did your so-called river gods have any reports to the imperial court? Official document. This sentence was like hitting a snake 7 inches, and it immediately got to the point. However, some people didn't understand what Su Tong meant, so they just continued to shout. Why is it appointed by the imperial court? The river god is a god, a spiritual creature of heaven and earth, and protects a place. There is no need for an imperial appointment. That's what I've been waiting for. Su Tong's eyes turned cold. After he got the information he wanted, he no longer wanted to get entangled with them. His voice suddenly turned cold. How can mountain spirits and ghosts dare to consecrate themselves to gods without an imperial order or imperial edict? This is an iron law. Anyone who violates it will be punished by causing trouble. Su Tong's voice was powerful and sonorous, shaking the void. He actually doesn't know whether there is such a rule in this era, but he read a lot of books when he was in Kintian prison, and there is indeed such a rule in it. Since there is a Hunshan prison in this world, and the Hunshan prison and the Kintian prison are the same institution, then this rule must exist. Whether there is or not, most of the people present are illiterate, let alone whether anyone understands the law. Even these gangsters from the Hessian division were shocked for a moment. Even if they wanted to make strong arguments, they didn't know how to argue. This is the law of the country, and there is no room for arguments like these idiots. After Su Tong said this, he immediately pointed at the people of the Hessian division. Since it is an evil spirit, you neither reported it nor found a way to eradicate it. Instead, you acted as an accomplice and harmed the villagers. According to Tang Lu Shuyi, those who create evil writings and evil words will hanged. Anyone who acts as an aide to a tiger or uses demons to cause chaos, beheaded in half. When the last 2 words were spoken, everyone present felt chills all over their bodies. The faces of everyone in the Hessian division suddenly turned pale. There were many eloquent people among them, but this was a national law and an iron rule, and they were not allowed to argue. I struggled in my heart for a moment before I wanted to use the name of the prefect. But Su Tong's next words destroyed their illusions. If you want to say that this matter was approved by the prefect, then we will go to the prefect to ask clearly. According to the Tang Lv Shuyi, officials who condone evil spirits to dazzle the village will be executed, the whole family will be exiled, and the descendants will live for 3 generations. A slave turned into a prostitute. I want to see if it is his official position or this Dharma position. Even a fool should understand that Su Tong's words were clearly telling them not to count on the prefect. He would never admit it even if he died. Who are you? Someone finally thought of the key issue. As soon as these words came out, everyone focused their attention on Su Tong. If this young master had an identity and could expose this matter, it would be okay. But if this person has no identity. Su Tong looked at the eyes around him, both hopeful and worried. Seeing this, he turned around and opened his hand to Guoyi beside him. Give me the document. Promise. Guoyi quickly took out the documents he always carried with him and handed them to Su Tong. Su Tong opened the document. I am Li Zhang. I am the river inspector appointed by the current saint, and I am ordered to supervise the river. The affairs of your river god department happen to be within my jurisdiction. I want to kill you, even if you are the governor. It's useless for adults to intercede with you. Boom. As soon as these words came out, there was a thunder in the sky. It's over. Everyone in the Hessian division had cold sweat on their foreheads, as if their backbone had been taken away. Their whole bodies were so weak that they felt a faint chill running down their spines. Greetings to the master, please make the decision for me. After hearing this, everyone knelt down and began to tell the crimes of everyone in the Hessian division one by one. Sir, I saw with my own eyes that they carried away those who were weak and put them on the ship. I didn't know where they were sent to at first, but the people who were sent away never came back. They must have been tortured by them. Feeding the river god, no, it's the bastard. As the Lord of the land said, God is watching what people do. The people of the Hessian division thought that they had done a perfect job, but little did they know that someone had noticed their abnormal movements long ago. It was only because of the support of someone behind the Hessian division that they did not dare to come forward rashly. Now that someone is supporting them, the pressure suddenly disappears and they immediately jump out to identify them. Seeing everyone verbally criticizing him, the faces of everyone in the Hessian division turned frighteningly pale. You still haven't confessed your guilt. Su Tong glanced at them. Now everyone in the Hessian division no longer dared to quibble anymore. They nodded obediently and confessed. However, while confessing, they would inevitably bring in a scapegoat. We were ordered to do this by the prefect Song's relatives and friends. He said that if the river god is full, we can also get rich, so he ordered us to do it. Yes, we don't want to either, but the prefect Song Kinpeng said that if we don't do it, we will be thrown into the river to feed the river god. We are all forced. Don't say you're not afraid of death. In reality, murderers often say this, but when it comes to a critical moment, no one is not afraid. These people usually dominate, and the viciousness in their hearts has long been smoothed away. At this time, knowing that there was no escape, he simply said what he had to say, and told everything in detail about the prefect's establishment of the Hessian division and the affairs he had with the Hessian lord. Everyone was heard gnashing their teeth, wishing they could skin all these beasts and cut them into pieces. Seeing their confession, Su Tong continued to ask, you said that bastard eats people every 2 days, so how did you find him? The prefect told us that there is a reed bush in the middle of the river with a reef inside. We send people up there every time before the second watch, and we don't have to worry about the rest. Yes, the river god is always in contact with the prefect. The prefect even said personally that he and the river god are sworn friends, brothers in life and death. After the river god becomes enlightened, he will definitely take him to practice together. At this time, these ruffians are talking about the prefect, and they can't wait to throw all the blame on the prefect's head. But it seemed that the effect was indeed good. When everyone listened to their words, they were annoyed and hated the Yang prefect for his crimes. First watch. Su Tong looked at the time. It's just right. Since this is the case, I'm sorry for the injustice. Take me there to have a look. What are you going to do? Heshenzi and others had a bad premonition. Your Majesty, you must not take any risks. Guoyi stepped forward and persuaded. He knew that the prince was hiding something secret, but a monster like the river god was definitely not something mortal bodies like them could handle. In this matter, the only way to go about this is to report to the imperial court and order Hunshan's supervisor to send someone. Su Tong knew that Guoyi cared about him, but he had to kill this bastard today. Only by killing this bastard could he gain a firm foothold in Yuyang. So he patted Guoyi on the shoulder to express his relief. Then he picked out the thorny heads in the Hessian division and threw them all on the boat. The rest were tied up in a big way, signaling to everyone to watch and don't let anyone beat them to death. These are all important certifications. Your Majesty. I'll go with you. Guoyi wanted to follow him, but before he could get closer, Su Tong glanced at him coldly. Just one look made Guoyi's heart tense, and an unprecedented sense of oppression came over him, making him unable to move. Come on, I'm not going to the underworld. Why do I need you to accompany me? Wait for me here. Su Tong grinned at Guoyi and others, jumped into the boat, and walked towards the lake. Brother Guo, just let the prince go on his own. The other attendants watched the prince go away, then walked to Guoyi and asked. Guoyi woke up after being asked by them. Looking at these brothers who had followed him all the way from Sichuan and Sichuan, Guoyi's eyes gradually turned cold. The prince is naturally absolutely sure. Only we and others can do this. Just guess, just wait here. After saying that, he ignored them and sat down on the stone beside him, waiting quietly. At the same time, 3 people slowly walked out of the woods in the distance. The 3 of them were wearing cloaks and hats, wrapping their bodies tightly. The 3 of them raised their heads and looked in the direction Su Tong was leaving. What do you think? It's reasonable and well-founded, not mediocre. Where's the strength? I can't tell for the time being whether I want to enter the river or not. No, remember. The 2 of them took out a booklet and charcoal pencils at the same time. The difference was that one was a red booklet and the other was a black booklet. The red book is kept and the black book is issued. I only heard the leader whisper, in the 2nd year of the holy calendar of Shenzhou, Li Jianchu, the crown prince of Prince Gong, came to Yuyang to set up a city god and judge evil spirits. He entered the river alone and waited for the results tomorrow. After the 2 men wrote down the same content verbatim, they took out the seals from their waists, confirmed that they corresponded to each other, and stamped their seals. Remember it again. The governor of Yuyang, Song's relatives and friends, took human life seriously, plundered the people's wealth, built fake temples, and allowed evil spirits to dazzle the people, making it difficult to repair the river and causing people's resentment to boil. He ordered Zhang Zhen, the governor of Yuyang, to investigate and deal with it immediately. The 2 of them wrote down the contents, and after confirming that they were stamped and branded correctly, they lifted up their cloaks, revealing a wooden cylindrical box around their waists. The box was opened and inside was a homing pigeon. These 2 pigeons are 1 size larger than ordinary pigeons. They have sharp claws, hooked pecks, and handsome postures, a bit like hawks. Stab it. After the contents of the 2 pages in the black book were hidden on the homing pigeon's ankle rings, the 2 raised their arms, and the homing pigeons immediately flew left and right, one flying to Yuyang City, and the other flying to the divine capital Luoyang. There will be another update later. This chapter is 6,000 words, 2 chapters combined into one. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 623. Wow, wow, wow. On the river, a small boat was traveling alone, drifting along the river into the reeds. Using the paddle to push aside the reeds, sure enough, a blood-red reef was seen standing on the water. The rocks were stained red with blood, and broken clothes and bones were scattered everywhere. In the past, people in the Hessian division didn't find it scary, but looking at the broken limbs and arms here today, their scalp went numb for a moment. "Sir, have mercy on me, my lord, have mercy on me. I have a 70-year-old mother at home, and I am the only male in our family. Please have mercy, sir." Some people were lying on the ground, crying and begging Su Tong to let them go. Unfortunately, no matter how much they begged for mercy, Su Tong's face remained expressionless. The indifferent gaze does not seem to be looking at a person at all, but an object, a tool. As soon as he raised his hand, Fasai emerged from the entrance of the hall and dexterously wrapped around Su Tong's hand. "I may have to sacrifice you for a while, but after this matter is over, I will make up for it for you." When facing fortune, Su Tong's voice was particularly gentle. Ever since fortune fell into his hands, he had never really felt comfortable. He was the one who sacrificed the most every time. Last time, in order to prevent Lao Dao from becoming a Taoist, his level was almost burned out. After finally recovering, Su Tong needed it to sacrifice again. Fa Cai turned into a meat dumpling and landed in Su Tong's palm. He shook his body and activated the skill to clone, and his chubby body shrunk by half. Su Tong held half of it in his hand, pinched it lightly, and rolled it into a golden ball. "Hey, it's up to you whether you can drink tortoise soup tonight." As he spoke, he grabbed the one who cried the loudest, raised his hand, and threw Fasai into the other person's mouth. "Whoa! I don't know what it is, but people instinctively want to vomit it out, but as soon as Fukai enters the mouth, it is like a loach encountering a hole, burrowing down the throat. Gudong. It wasn't until I swallowed it that the discomfort gradually disappeared." Then Su Tong raised his hand and threw these people onto the rocks, then rowed the boat leisurely. After stopping the boat, he jumped up, and the boots under his feet gave off a strange shimmer. This is the prop that Su Tong gambled out from the casino prop book Void Boots. This pair of shoes can not only improve dodge, but the active skill can increase the speed by 200%. More importantly, the passive skill of the boots can leave no trace on the snow. Quite practical. Passive skill, walking in the snow without leaving a trace. The holder ignores the troubles of natural terrain. For example, in mountains, forests, and snowy areas, which are difficult places to walk, the user can walk on flat ground without being affected by the natural environment. With the passive blessing of Ta Shui Wuhan, Su Tong stepped on the water and quietly got into the reeds without causing even the slightest ripple. Coupled with the assistance of black Biao brocade robe, even the slightest bit of popularity was not exuded. But this is the home court of the bastard after all, and Su Tong certainly doesn't dare to be careless. Whether the master can hold the position of city god depends on this bastard. So just in case, Su Tong also activated the active skill of Breath of Nature. Active Skill 1, Breath of Nature. Spend 10 script points to hide your own breath in the natural environment, integrating your body with the natural environment to achieve a camouflage effect. For a moment, Su Tong's figure gradually merged with the surrounding reeds. At this time, no matter whether the tortoise uses his soul to perceive or discerns with his naked eyes, it is difficult to detect Su Tong's existence. After doing everything, Su Tong began to wait patiently. Hoo-hoo. At the first watch of the night, it was getting late, and from time to time a cool breeze came from the lake, blowing the surrounding reeds and making a rustling sound. The few people on the reef looked at the growing darkness around them, becoming more and more nervous. They seemed to feel that death was approaching them at a faster pace. It is said that fear comes from the unknown, but this may not always be the case. Compared to the people who were left here to die before, these people in the Hessian division are like death row prisoners who clearly informed you of the execution time. As time goes by, the mental pressure increases. They usually looked fierce, but at this moment their faces were full of panic. They thought about running away, but Guoyi and others were not good at torture and extorting confessions, but when it came to the art of binding, they were definitely high-end players. Everyone was tied up one by one, and everyone was tied up tightly. Let alone escaping, whether they could straighten up or not was a problem. Woo, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. Someone began to let out muffled sobs. Some people also began to curse, including Song's relatives and friends, Zhang Zhen and Li Zheng. They cursed so much that even their own parents and even the current saints began to greet him, as if the whole world owed him something. But after the impotent rage, there were waves of emptiness and panic. Wow! At this time, Su Tong's eyelids moved slightly. Ripples were seen on the water surface, and everyone could hear the sound of paddling. The river god is here. Someone with sharp ears and eyes immediately raised his head after hearing the sound, then forced himself to kneel on the ground, kowtowed desperately toward the front, and said in his mouth, "Lord River God, it's us. I'm Zhang Kun. We are your disciples and grandsons. We are from the River God division. Don't eat us. Don't eat us." The ruffian Zhang Kun shouted loudly, with an unprecedented piety in his voice. Before today, he didn't know what the river god looked like, and he didn't know whether he was a real god, but now he hoped that the river god was a real god, because gods don't eat humans. In his days, Zhang Kun completely forgot how the river god ate those ordinary people. Suddenly, Zhang Kun's shoulders sank, and a fishy smell hit his nostrils from behind. He could feel a hand touching his shoulder, and the cold fingers seemed to be sliding up the back of his head. His scalp felt tight for a moment. Goosebumps all over my body stood up involuntarily. Is it the river god? Zhang Kun did not dare to look back and kept chanting, River God, I am Zhang Kun, I am your disciple and grandson." When the cool breeze blew, Zhang Kun's body trembled, and his crotch was already full of stench. At this time, the strange feeling behind him gradually disappeared, allowing Zhang Kun's tense heartstrings to gradually relax. He took courage and slowly looked behind him. When I turned around, the cool breeze moved slightly, but there was nothing behind me. Well, but it was just a fantasy that ran through his mind. Only when Zhang Kun swallowed his foam and was about to turn his head and look back. Ouch! Suddenly, a bloody mouth opened and he bit down from the top of his head. Caucasian blood spurted out for a while, and the sound of bones and minced meat rubbing against each other echoed under the night sky. Ah! Desperate screams continued one after another, echoing on the huge river. However, the sound soon stopped. Hoo-hoo! The reeds danced in the wind, and drops of blood dripped down the leaves. The blood spilled out along the reeds, floated along the river for a while, and then disappeared quickly. There were broken corpses all over the ground. There was no miracle or mercy, and there was only the sound of chewing in the air. A huge head slowly poked its head out of the soil, swallowing the corpse into its mouth with big mouthfuls. In its indifferent eyes, there was no feeling at all for the blood food of these self-proclaimed disciples. It has survived for nearly 300 years. In its eyes, these humans are just like the fish and shrimp in the water, they are just delicious and full of vitality food. In addition to the relatively good taste, more importantly, at this moment, it needs the vitality of these foods to restore its soul from the heavy damage it suffered yesterday. As soon as he thought of this, those huge eyes couldn't help but raise their head and look in the direction of Yuyang City, their eyes full of resentment and anger. His soul cast a spell, but the city god suddenly returned to his position and he was caught off guard. Although the city god has just taken office and has not even established a firm foothold yet, The city god is the lord of a city. Naturally, he will not be pleased if his spirit breaks into Yuyang City rashly. Fortunately, although Yuan Shen was injured, the trauma was not serious. He just had splitting headaches every day. Only by swallowing a large amount of blood food could he recover as soon as possible. Thinking of this, it couldn't help but wonder if it should give Yuyang governor a dream and ask him to send more blood food in the next few days. Well, I want a younger one. Today's one is too old and a bit hard to chew. The huge head was stretching its neck to gnaw, and suddenly it noticed a vague shadow in the reeds quietly approaching it. How could this old turtle not be a little vigilant after surviving in this vast river for more than 300 years? The moment he saw the shadow, the old turtle jerked his neck and spat out a ball of blood. The blood balls were mixed with human bones and exploded like a shotgun once spit out. Boom! Suddenly the sky was filled with blood, and large reeds fell to the ground. This move of Lao Turtle can be described as extremely vicious. It seems to be mainly forceful, but in fact, what is really terrifying is the blood mist that spreads. This blood mist is mixed with his unique stomach acid, which is even gold. A strong acid that can dissolve it. There was a Taoist priest who wanted to surrender to him, but he was caught off guard and seriously injured on the spot by his move. However, what the old turtle didn't expect was that a figure emerged from the blood mist in front of him, but ignored the bone-crushing attack and the terrifying acid in the blood mist and flew towards him. Demon had arrived. The fire of hell ignited, and the firelight illuminated the night sky, revealing a figure covered in blue and black dragon armor. Even his face and eyes were covered by a thin layer of scales. A lion fights a rabbit with all his strength, let alone confronting such a monster. Su Tong certainly has no chance of showing mercy. The Chunyang sword was unsheathed, and Su Tong held it tightly with both hands, slashing the sword in the air. Pyrophilia. The active skill of fiery sword technique Fire Love is activated. Fire Passion, LV3, add 3, Pure Yang sword passive, Demon King arrives fire skill increase. Proficiency, 60/100. Spend 20 script points to summon the tiger-shaped sword energy to cause fire explosion damage to targets within 100 meters in front. When the corrosive fire, hellfire, and flaming sword energy were mixed together, the flames turned into a strange vermilion, giving people an indescribable sense of evil. Ouch! The roar of the tiger penetrated the sky, and a giant tiger in the sea of vermilion fire exuded a fierce murderous aura and pounced on the old turtle, and everything around it instantly vaporized in its path. Even in Yuyang City, which is more than 10 miles away, you can still see the dazzling red light on the horizon in the distance. The old turtle may have never dreamed that the other party just spit out a mouthful of phlegm. How about you come up and give me a king bomb? Immediately, the huge body turned, and the reef split open. It turned out that the reef tightly surrounded by reeds turned out to be the old turtle's body. Fortunately, Su Tong had Wuhan and a black brocade robe, otherwise he would have been noticed by the old turtle when he turned back. Immediately, the old turtle's body trembled, and he desperately wanted to dive into the water. It had already felt the terror of the flames, and at the same time, it wanted to retract its head into the turtle shell. The old turtle has great confidence in his turtle shell, which is his natal treasure that has been sacrificed for 300 years. As long as you save your head, it doesn't matter if your limbs are damaged. At worst, you can just eat a few more people. But since Su Tong took action with all his strength, how could he give him a chance to escape? Just as the old turtle was about to lower his neck, he suddenly felt a huge pain in his throat. Golden spears pierced the skin from under his throat, and his head was stuck outside the turtle shell. The severe pain made the old turtle scream, and he opened his mouth to spit out a large ball of strong acid from his stomach, which instantly corroded the strange thing stuck in his throat. But at this moment, the fire tiger had already landed with a crash, and its two front paws touched the water surface, causing the water surface to evaporate quickly, just like the giant tiger tearing the water surface out of thin air. Boom! Accompanied by earth-shattering rumbles, everyone on the river bank stared with wide eyes and held their breaths at the vermilion water in front of them. This moment was unforgettable for them. The number of updates today has already reached 10,000 words. The previous chapter was 2 articles. This chapter is to repay the debt from yesterday. I will continue to add more chapters to repay the debt tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 624. The river was filled with vermilion fire, bursts of white smoke rose, and most of the river was illuminated by the fire. Hulilu. Large bubbles appeared on the water, a shadow emerged from under the water with a crash, and a huge turtle shell floated on the water. Su Tong tiptoed and landed lightly on the turtle shell. After a closer look, he found that although the turtle shell was full of scratches, it had not been actually scratched. But the old turtle's head was exposed, exuding a pungent burnt smell. Seeing this, Su Tong tried to strike it with the pure yang sword several times. The sound of clanging was heard. With a divine weapon like the pure yang sword, it only made a shallow mark, which made Su Tong secretly happy. The sword he just struck seemed to be just a skill activated, but in fact, the sword was almost a full-strength strike. Pyrophilia's level reached LV3 after passing through the training ground. The level may not seem high, but the pure yang sword increases fire addiction by 1 level, plus the Demon King's Advent fire skill increases by 2 levels. At this time, the level of fire addiction has reached level 6. Don't forget, the damage of Pyrophilia is based on the fire skill increase level. The hellfire descended by the Demon King, coupled with the corrosive flames, and the fiery sword energy, contributed to the vermilion flames, and the power of the fire addiction has reached an appalling level. Su Tong found it incredible that such a sword did not split the turtle shell open. Fortunately, I was afraid that I would miss a hit, so I took measures in advance, so that the wealthy clone got stuck on the turtle's head that wanted to shrink in at the critical moment. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll miss the mark and it will be difficult to kill this bastard again. Even in the future, when I pass by the river, I have to be careful, maybe this bastard will sneak up on me. Fortunately, the sacrifice to get rich is worthy of recognition. Hey, with you, my master's city god will be safe. Su Tong squinted his eyes and pointed at the burnt turtle head. After getting rid of this disaster, the next thing for me will be much simpler. Quack. At this time, there was a sound of a toad, and the sound came from the burnt turtle's head, and a fat golden toad emerged from the turtle's head. When Su Tong saw it, it turned out to be the clone of Fortune, but the clone that was originally the size of a baby's fist was now only as big as an egg. Although it's a little small, it's better to have some left than nothing. Quack. The toad kicked off its legs and landed in Su Tong's hand. The man in the hall stretched out a slender tentacle, patted the clone gently, and sucked the clone back. However, when Fa Cai took back his clone, a green pearl the size of a thumb fell on Su Tong's hand. What's this? Su Tong took a look and saw that this thing was still warm in his hand. It should be taken from the old turtle to get rich. Then Fa Cai gave a brief explanation, and it turned out that this thing was a demon pill hidden in the lower jaw of the old turtle. After being noticed by the remaining clone of Fortune, he took out the demon pill. Su Tong threw it into the prop book. The best demon pill 360 years. It is edible and can be refined into special elixirs. If it is not consumed directly by the demon system, there is a risk of demon poison. Note, it's not just roosters that lay eggs. Hey, this thing is really good. Although I am not a demon system, the dark Ilong body should not be that bad. I just don't know what the use of eating this thing is. Keep it for now. If it is of no use, just let's share it with Daya and the other three. But besides the demon pill, there is one more thing that must be taken away. Su Tong waved his hand, and the demon bell appeared in his hand. As soon as the bell rang, the soul arresting technique was activated. He grabbed the corpse of the river demon at his feet, and a ball of soul as big as a baby's fist was forcibly taken into Su Tong's hand. It is worthy of being a river demon who has eaten the incense of the human world and practiced cultivation for 300 years. It is as big as other people's souls, but it is good that it is so big. He threw it into the hall and gave it to Jixiang for safekeeping. When he went back, he took some time to refine it and see what good treasures could be made from it. At this time, a strange noise sounded. Looking for the sound, I found thousands of fireflies floating out of the corpse. Legend. After a person dies, if he still misses him, he will not be able to enter reincarnation, reincarnate, and finally become fireflies, surrounding his loved ones. Su Tong looked at the thousands of fireflies in front of him and could only imagine how many people this bastard had killed over the years. Let's go. I'll take you home. Although the character in my script this time is an official fan. But he has not forgotten his duty as a member of the 7 sects. I saw Su Tong taking out a stack of thick yellow paper, waving his hand and throwing it towards the sky. Wow! When hundreds of yellow papers fell on the water, they had been turned into a boat. From the props book, he took out the set of tools his master gave him, a leather tube, opened it and took out 3 sticks of yellow incense. If you don't have an incense burner, just use this turtle shell to make one. Su Tong took a look and saw that among the cracks of different depths on the turtle shell, there happened to be a crack of just the right length and depth. 3 yellow incense sticks were inserted on it. With a wave of his hand, the 3 yellow incense sticks were lingering on the green smoke. Su Tong summoned Fa Cai again, turned Fa Cai into a paddle, and stepped on the turtle under his feet to slide to the other side of the river bank. With the other hand, he sprinkled the money in the air and raised his voice softly, "Go home." Wow! The guide money sprinkled down like snowflakes, and thousands of fireflies landed on the paper boat on the water, and followed Su Tong as he swam to the other side of the river. At this moment, the river bank was already crowded with people. In addition to those people who were digging river channels captured by the river god division, there were many people who saw the movement in the city and ran out to watch the excitement. Everyone looked at the Vermilion River in the distance. They had never seen such a spectacular sight in their lives, and everyone's heart was already in their throats. Look! Suddenly someone screamed and raised his hand to the water in the distance. Everyone looked in the direction, and for a moment everyone's eyes were filled with an unforgettable brilliance. Under the sky full of vermilion, a thin young man walked across the water, holding a paddle and stepping on a huge turtle shell. "Your Majesty!" Guo Yi shouted loudly, clenched his fists, and excitedly rushed down the river bank, stepped on the cold lake water, and jumped on the turtle shell. "Your Majesty, are you okay? Are you injured?" Faced with Guo Yi's concern, Su Tong was still very moved and patted him on the shoulder. "Bless me, city god. Look, I'm fine. As long as it's okay, it'll be okay." As Guo Yi said this, he kept looking at Su Tong with his eyes. It was not until he was sure that the prince was really uninjured that his anxious heart relaxed. "Thank God, thank Master Li, the river demon is dead." On the river bank, an old man knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Su Tong. Someone recognized this old man. His name was Huang Jinggan, and people called him Lao Huang. 3 generations of their family have been fishing for a living, but their son died in the mouth of a river demon. After his son died, Huang often dreamed that his son was calling his father underwater. For this reason, Lao Huang sold all his coffins and gave all the money to the river god, hoping that the river god would let his son's soul go home. However, there was nothing further about this incident. However, Lao Huang went through many vicissitudes overnight. He stood at the door of his house every morning and night, calling his son's name. Someone tried to persuade Lao Huang to be more liberal, but Lao Huang told people that his son had not come back yet and he would wait for his son to come back. Speaking of hatred, Lao Huang would probably be able to peel off this bastard's skin and cramp it. Now that I saw that the river demon was finally dead, I burst into tears for a while and called my son's name. Son, look, this damn thing is finally dead. Your great revenge must be avenged, my son. Lao Wang's cries echoed on the river bank, but the cries were not just from one family. The reason why Yuyang is called Yuyang is because every household does not rely on fishing to make a living. Ever since this river demon came, ever since the Damsong relatives and friends became the prefect, the people of Yuyang City have never had a good day. Now God has opened his eyes. A good official came to Yuyang, captured the river god Si, and killed the river demon. These two things were enough for the people of Yuyang to set up a monument of merit for him. However, Su Tong cannot take this credit. Although he can take this benefit himself, I believe that the incense merit will be great, but this is not a long-term solution. After completing the identity mission, he must leave Yuyang City. They say people leave after the tea is cold. I don't know how long I will stay in the script world this time, so in order to ensure this popularity, I'd better not take this credit on myself. Better. What's more, from the perspective of his personal identity, he is just a prince who is dedicated to being an official and slaying demons. It's better not to let this kind of thing happen to you easily. Fellow folks. Su Tong stepped on the body of the river demon and took a step forward. For a moment, the people on the river bank turned their eyes to the great master Qing Tian. I saw Su Tong pretending to be groping in his sleeves, but it was as if he wanted to make a fortune and turned into a golden document. Everyone looked at the golden document in Su Tong's hand and listened to him read loudly. According to the order of the city god, the Yuyang River demon is causing trouble for the people and detaining the living souls to disturb the yin and yang. This is a heinous crime and should be punished with the punishment of heavenly fire. The souls will be scattered and never be reincarnated. The trapped souls should open the door to the netherworld to pass through the transmigration, and the soul will return to the underworld. Su Tong's voice was as loud as a bell, and everyone could hear every word clearly. Only Guo Yi looked at the document in Su Tong's hand with a blank face, his eyes widened, and he looked at it for a long time, but he didn't see a single word on it. Good guy, it's hard to make it now. But it doesn't matter whether it is a freshly made version or whether it is true or false. Just as the old monk of White Horse Temple said at the time, although it may seem like a trick to fool people, it is also a kind act to appease people's hearts. Everyone suddenly realized that it was the city god who sent down the fire from the sky. No wonder there was such a loud movement. While everyone was still surprised at how powerful the city god was, someone suddenly saw dense paper boats floating behind the river demon. These paper boats shone with a faint fluorescent light. After everyone wiped their eyes for a few times and took a closer look, they saw that there was actually a firefly landing on each boat. At this moment, a divine light that could not be observed by ordinary people suddenly rose from the Chenghuang Temple in Yuyang City. The divine light surged into the sky. For a moment, the fireflies on the boat, as if they had been inspired by something, flew up from the paper boat and formed a ray of light. The green rainbow flies in the direction of the city god's temple. This was not something Su Tong had discussed with his master. It is the responsibility of the city god. The city god is not only a yang god, but also a yin god. In addition to protecting the safety of a place, he is also responsible for the affairs of the underworld in this area. What's more, the master himself is a member of the seven sects. Even if he has no responsibilities, he will definitely take over and help Su Tong extradite these ghosts to the underworld. Therefore, the most suitable position for the city god is for the master to sit on it. I read a book a few days ago. It's quite good, and it's also in the infinite genre. Although I'm a newbie, it has the flavor of a guhuo bird. The title of the book is Zhu Tian, starting from Shili Yang Chang. If you are interested, you can read it. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 625. Everyone watched the little fluorescent lights flying into Yuyang City. After learning that people would turn into fireflies after death, they burst into tears with excitement. Wang Er, come back, come back, Lao Huang knelt on the ground and shouted his son's nickname. For a while, there were constant cries on the river bank. Listening to the calls of these parents, wives, and children, everyone burst into tears with tears in their eyes. In the distance, Nai Haitang, Zhao Peng, and Li Xinliang watched from a distance. After all, Su Tong made such a big noise, and they would be blind if they hadn't noticed it. I didn't expect that he was actually an official. Nai Haitang's eyes were slightly red. Hearing the voices of people on the river bank calling for relatives and friends, he was inevitably touched. He is a good official. He is also a rare master. Zhao Peng stared expressionlessly at Su Tong. It seems that he was also responsible for summoning the city god. It's him. When Nai Haitang thought about it, he couldn't help but be shocked. Did Fat and Thin Taochuo also be killed by him? It's possible. If you can kill the river demon, your strength must be higher than that of Fat and Xiao Tuchuo. Zhao Peng took a deep breath, looked at this face that was younger than himself, and couldn't help but secretly wonder, what is the origin of this person? How can he have such strength at such a young age? Could it be that he is a disciple of a certain senior in the three sects? Elder brother, look, these ghosts have all flown to the city god's temple. With the city god guiding them, they will soon be able to enter the underworld. Li Xinliang looked at the fireflies flying overhead and sighed. Let's go, the river demon thing has nothing to do with us, what's important is the Modha cult. After Zhao Peng said that, he turned around and left. Nai Haitang and Zhao Xinliang couldn't help but look at each other. For some reason, they felt that the senior brother seemed a little impatient today. At this moment, there were constant shouts and cries. Su Tong waited patiently for a while. When everyone's emotions were almost restored, he shouted. Fellow villagers, the dead will be punished and the great revenge will be avenged. However, the relatives and friends of Song Dynasty, the prefect of Yuyang, harmed the common people in the village and colluded with the river monster. This is not allowed by nature. Everyone, follow me and seek justice. As soon as these words came out, the eyes of everyone on the river bank turned red. The river demon was hateful, but Song's relatives and friends were even more hateful. As an official of Yuyang, he actually colluded with the river demon and blatantly established the river god division to collect people's money. It is really hateful to be able to even do such a thing as feeding the river god. Demand for justice. Everyone shouted, and some people rushed down the river bank and carried out the body of the turtle in the river. The body, which was like a small mountain, was carried on the shoulders by dozens of men with hemp ropes and wooden sticks, and they walked towards Yuyang City. As for those members of the Hessianzi who were not selected by Su Tong to feed the bastards, they were carried away with sticks by everyone. Along the way, rocks and rotten vegetable leaves were thrown at these people's faces for free. Good. Looking at the team carrying the body of the river god away, 3 people walked out of the woods. Sir, this boy is good. Oh, how good is it? Don't be greedy. He, that's right. He is obviously a gift from heaven, but he is willing to give it up. Prince Gong has a good son, remember. After saying this, the 2 people immediately took out their notebooks and charcoal pencils. At the 3rd watch of the clock, Li Zheng, the eldest son of Prince Gong, borrowed the power of the city god to draw fire from the sky and kill the river monsters. The city god of Yuyang received the souls of the dead and converted them into humans. His merits are immeasurable. After the 2 of them finished writing, they couldn't help but raise their heads in confusion and looked at the leader in front of them. Everyone can see that it is true that the city god can attract the souls of the dead, but using the power of the city god to kill the river monster is too fake. If the city god really has this ability, why has the Yang city god been absent from his post? Seemingly aware of the confusion between the two, the leader smiled slightly and said, "Your Majesty, I will explain it myself. Since they are unwilling to take the credit, why should we be evil people and just go along with the flow of favor?" When the two heard this, they immediately understood that this was an adult protecting Li Zheng. Although this was a meritorious service, as an official, if he blocked this supernatural power from himself, it would arouse the resentment of the adults in the court. At that time, it will affect his official career. After the two signed each other's stamps, they put the book away. The dragons and pigeons they carried had been released, and they could only wait until they returned to Yang City to meet up with the other Shinwu guards. It was just the middle of the night, and according to the rules, there was a curfew. But today is indeed an exception. The streets are brightly lit, and people from every house come out holding lanterns to light up a path. The huge corpse of the river demon was moved into the city. People looked at the mountain-like corpse. After being frightened, they all let out a wave of cheers. When they heard that this bastard was going to be cut up and distributed among the common people, butchers from all over the city came over with butcher knives. The river demon is dead. The river demon is dead. The children on the streets were not sleeping anymore, shouting along the streets with the news that the river monster was dead. In the back house of Yang Yamen, I heard the shouts coming from outside. Song Qinpeng sat on the chair, his face was so pale that there was no trace of blood, and he picked up the wine glass with trembling fingers. This was his favorite sake. This sake is not the kind made by Japanese. Instead, it is pressed from the wine jar with a special wine filtering tool, and filtered again with a turbine. This kind of wine is called sake. Song's relatives and friends sipped the sake in their hands and stared blankly at the 3-foot white silk hanging on the beam. "Sir, let's get on our way." Outside the door, 4 guards with swords urged him. The commotion outside was getting louder and louder. The yamen was surrounded by water, and even the officials of the yamen had disappeared. This matter has reached this point, and it is not an exaggeration to think that Song's relatives and friends would be skinned and cramped by these people. The Song relatives and friends drank down the wine glasses in their hands and said with a smile, "Go back and tell your adults that the Wu family can protect him for a while, but not for the rest of his life. I, Song, am waiting for him on the Huangquan road." As they spoke, Song's relatives and friends stepped on the stools, raised their hands and slowly put Bai Ling around their necks, looking up at the roof. 10 years of cold windows, 30 years of spring and autumn, what an injustice. Boom. His toes glared, and the bench under his feet fell to the ground. The 4 guards stood outside the door, watching silently with cold eyes. They didn't stand up and leave quickly after seeing Song Qinpeng's struggling legs completely stop moving. "Song dog thief, get out." People were already standing outside the yamen, and everyone was shouting that they wanted to kill Song's relatives and friends with 1,000 knives. When Guoyi and others came to suppress the people of Heshenzi, countless curses made these once majestic bullies scared to death. Thousands of people's accusations ended without a cure. This kind of pressure is not something that ruffians like them can bear. When Su Tong led the group to the yamen gate, before he could speak, he heard a shout in the distance. "The governor is here." A large number of officers and soldiers came out neatly from one side. When everyone took a look, they saw the governor Zhang Zhen walking quickly under the protection of the officers and soldiers. Su Tong looked sideways, looking at his immediate boss, and couldn't help curling his lips. It's just the right time. To be honest, although he Shen Si Zhong insisted that the governor Song's relatives and friends asked them to do this, it would be hell to say that he didn't know anything about such a big thing as the governor of a state. However, Investigating the case is not his responsibility, nor is it his main task. Since the clues have landed on Song Kinpeng deserves to be unlucky. As for whether Song's relatives and friends will bite this adult out, that is another matter. No matter what, for now, I still need to greet my immediate boss obediently. After all, his identity mission is to build rivers. Strictly speaking, the affairs of the River God Division and the River Demon have nothing to do with his identity mission. It's just that if I don't kill this group of players first, I don't know how much trouble I will add if I want to complete my identity mission. Don't forget how the 3 river inspectors before you died. River Inspector Li Zheng has met the governor. Su Tong's hands were slightly arched, but his body stood upright. There is no need to be polite. Although you and I are different in terms of superiority and inferiority, there is no difference in terms of authority. Moreover, since Mr. Li is the river inspector appointed by the saint, I will fully cooperate with you on river affairs in the future. Zhang Zhen said it very sincerely. But this sentence, translated means, don't forget that I am still your immediate boss, but you are appointed by the saint, and my relationship with the Wu family is extraordinary, so we are grasshoppers on a rope. From now on, you will be the one to decide what happens on your river, but it is not your business, so you can stay out of it. Of course Su Tong could understand the underlying meaning, but he pretended not to understand. When he heard the words, he had a serious expression on his face. Thank you for that, sir. Zhang Zhen was startled, his face remained calm, but he couldn't help but murmured in his heart, did you understand it? However, Zhang Zhen didn't want to be serious with Su Tong at this time. People's resentment was boiling now, and he had to step in to quell the public resentment as soon as possible. Otherwise, if De Tian heard about the matter, he would also be implicated. Immediately Zhang Zhen came out, took out the documents he had prepared earlier, and read out to everyone, Yuyang Magistrate Song Qin and friends, corrupt and perverting the law, allowed monsters to harm the people, gathered idle people to spread rumors and rumors, ordered them to be cut in half, and the river god helped everyone behead. I don't know if Zhang really thought of Hessian SI as Hessian gang intentionally or unintentionally. Although there is a difference in words, the meanings are thousands of miles apart. The former is an official and the latter is a thief. This makes it clear that we must try our best to clear up the relationship and leave no consequences. Behead him, behead him. The crowd was excited, and they all jumped for joy when they saw the officers and soldiers smashing open the gate of the yamen. However, when people broke down the door of the yamen and rushed into the yamen to arrest Song's relatives and friends, they were stunned as soon as they entered the archway of the back house. I saw 7 corpses lying neatly on the ground. Inside were the old mothers, wives, children, and concubines of Song's relatives and friends. Everyone was lying neatly, holding a lantern to shine. Under the light, everyone's face was covered with black and blue bloodshot eyes. Apparently he was poisoned. When people rushed into the inner hall and took a look, Song Kinpeng himself had hanged himself from the beam, and there was a freshly written confession on the table. It clearly states the crimes he has committed over the years and the bribes he has collected. When the officials carried the body out, everyone saw that Song's relatives and friends had committed suicide. They were so angry that they wanted to cut his body into pieces and throw it into the river to feed the fish. The culprit, Song's relatives and friends, committed suicide out of fear of the crime. Someone will come and escort everyone from the river god gang to the execution ground and execute them. At that moment, everyone in Hessiancy was as limp as mud, and they were escorted to the execution ground amidst everyone's yelling and scolding. Many ordinary people went along with them, and they had to see the heads of these bastards fall to the ground with their own eyes to satisfy their hatred. Lao Huang was also among the crowd, but when he reached the intersection, he suddenly heard a familiar shout. "Father!" The familiar voice made Lao Huang stop and turn his head slowly. In a trance, he saw his son standing at the street corner waving to him. "Wang Er!" Lao Wang's eyes widened, fearing that he had seen wrongly. He walked forward step by step, and gently stroked his son's cold cheek with his trembling palms. Wang you're back. Lao Wang's eyes were moist, and he couldn't believe that he could see his son standing in front of him again. Dad. I'm hungry, let's go home. Hey, go home, son, we are going home. Someone turned around and saw Lao Huang walking back alone, and couldn't help shouting, Old Huang, where are you going? Aren't you going to the execution ground? No, let's go home and cook. On the path under the night sky, Lao Huang staggered forward. In a trance, there seemed to be a shadow holding Lao Wang's arm, walking home step by step. I'll start coding after dinner for the next update. There will be another update tonight.